Chapter 11:19. The words on the paper. They were strange words that he didn't recognize. Not only were they engraved on the paper, but they were also engraved on the 10,008 light spots in the array. However, compared to the size of the paper, the words engraved on the light spots were extremely small. Even the largest light spot, which was the size of a button, had extremely small words on it. What did you think of? Thousand Love Emperor's beautiful eyes flashed. After hesitating for a moment, Lin Feng nodded and said, "It's just a thought. Tell me about it." Thousand Love Emperor smiled. One person's skills were weak, while two people's skills were strong. Moreover, they were now companions, so they should help each other. During this adventure in the Sparrow King prison, they had gone through life and death together, so they had already established a deep friendship. The words on each light spot are different, Thousand Love Emperor murmured. I'm not completely sure, but Lin Feng's eyes sparkled as he said slowly, at least the 12 largest light spots have different words on them. He had locked onto the light spots with his spatial aura and had broken the array's power several times. Although he hadn't seen all the words on the light spots, he had seen many of them. No matter how small the words were, he could clearly remember them. Even if he didn't understand them, it didn't matter. Can you draw them all? Thousand Love Emperor's eyes lit up. No problem. Lin Feng smiled indifferently. This wasn't a big problem for him. Soon, Lin Feng began to draw. Although he needed to draw them all, which would not only consume energy, but also a lot of time, he had plenty of time. On the contrary, there were very few chances. There were only 108 flame feathers left, and he couldn't afford to waste any more. There was only one chance. He had to increase the probability of this chance by any means. Cheat, cheat, cheat. The amethyst spear was used as a pen. Lin Feng's eyes shone, and the words on the light spots were clearly engraved in his mind. He enlarged them bit by bit, revealing the structure of the words. It was a perfect copy. It wasn't difficult. Compared to drawing the inscription array, it was much simpler. Thousand Love Emperor pursed her lips as she carefully observed and pondered, trying to decipher the mystery of these words. However, it was easier said than done. 2 hours later, Lin Feng withdrew his spear and stood there, his eyes bright. The first 3 rows and 4 columns perfectly reflected the 12 pages of words. Although the number of words was much less compared to the words on the paper, the shape and structure were exactly the same. They must be the same type of words. Did you find anything? Lin Feng looked at Thousand Love Emperor. The latter gently shook her head. Her beautiful face was as calm as a lake. Lin Feng smiled casually and did not mind. If it was so easy to decipher the mystery of these words, he wouldn't have to spend so much effort. If I can understand these words, the secret of the formation will be easily solved. What a pity, Lin Feng said softly as his gaze swept across the 12 texts. It was as if he was looking at a pile of symbols. He was completely at a loss and could not make any connections. However, this was the only way left. Let's see if there's anything special about it, Lin Feng said softly. 68, 70, 63. Lin Feng tapped his fingers lightly and counted in boredom. When he was drawing just now, he already knew. Now that he took a closer look, there was indeed a slight difference in the number of words. 12 pieces of text. The minimum was 60 words, and the maximum was 75 words. The difference was less than 20 words. However, the number of words was not the same in any of the texts. But many of the words are exactly the same. Lin Feng's eyes lit up as he glanced at the first and second texts. There were 3 words that were the same. He then glanced at the second and third texts. There were also 3 words that were the same. However, the first and third texts had 4 words that were the same. The similarities were different. The most common ones were the 10th and 12th texts. There were a total of 11 words that were the same. Moreover, 8 of the words were connected together. Lin Feng frowned slightly. He seemed to have discovered something, but he could not put his finger on it. This pattern seemed to have no effect, but it meant something. Could it be related to this parchment? Lin Feng's eyes lit up. He quickly took out the parchment and looked at the 9th text. The light spot represented by the 9th text was the parchment that Qian Lian Huang had obtained after entering. At this moment, Qian Lian Huang seemed to have understood something. She raised her head and looked at Lin Feng. Her beautiful eyes slowly lit up. Compare. Lin Feng looked solemn. Although he could not understand these words, it was not a problem for him to compare them. There were 6 words on the first line of the parchment. Found it. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. He was pleasantly surprised. Soon, he found that the words on the 9th text were exactly the same as the words on the first line of the parchment. As if he had found a ray of hope, he continued to look at it with full concentration. There were a total of 18 words that were the same. It took up almost 30% of the 9th text. I understand now. Lin Feng was completely enlightened. He felt a pair of bright eyes looking at him and immediately raised his head. These words should be the introduction, Qian Lian Huang said softly. Lin Feng smiled. How did you find out? At first, I went in the wrong direction. I wanted to decipher the mystery of these words, but Qian Lian Huang looked at Lin Feng and smiled. When I saw you comparing the number of words, I suddenly realized that I was going in the wrong direction. Then I thought, if these words were the words I knew, what would they say? Lin Feng nodded gently. It should be about the things hidden in each semi-independent space. For example, treasures, cultivation places, or the path of Sparrow King. Qian Lian Huang's beautiful eyes flickered. Their eyes met, and the two of them smiled at each other. Their thoughts happened to be the same. These words should be more complicated than ours, Lin Feng said slowly. Or should I say, delicate? Qian Lian Huang pointed with her slender finger and said softly, if we use the words of the Douling world as the introduction, we only need half of the words to finish the explanation. She paused and pointed at the 10th and 12th chapters. There are 8 words repeated here. In the Douling world, it's equivalent to a sentence. But here, I'm afraid it's just a noun. For example, innate treasures, cultivation places, and so on, Qian Lian Huang said. As for the repeated words, they should be more commonly used words, Lin Feng said slowly. Fortunately, we're looking for a semi-independent space with the path of Sparrow King. Yes, we can use the elimination method. Qian Lian Huang smiled. Their tacit understanding was excellent. This is a big project. Lin Feng's eyes shone brightly as he looked at the lightning-fast light spots and smiled helplessly. But now it was the only way. Even if it was a foolish old man moving a mountain, he had to give it a try. Sorry to trouble you, Qian Lian Huang said apologetically. Although her spatial energy could lock onto the light spots, she couldn't see the words on them clearly, let alone memorize them. Only Lin Feng could do this. It's okay. Lin Feng smiled. A big project. It was indeed a big project. Because they couldn't understand the words, they could only compare them. And comparison required sufficient materials. Whoosh! Whoosh! Lin Feng's eyes lit up as he maintained his state. While memorizing the words clearly, his hands quickly drew the words on the ground. Lines after lines of words were carved out. Thousand Love Sovereign's beautiful eyes flickered as she carefully compared them word by word. She wasn't careless at all. The division of labor and cooperation was seamless. There was no need for explanations. They trusted each other. 10, 20, 50. Phew. Lin Feng let out a sigh and stopped. After continuously using his self-status, Lin Fan felt a little tired. Drawing a total of 50 characters was not an easy task. Looking at the densely packed tadpole symbols, Lin Feng felt dizzy. There were too many materials, and the project was too big. Beads of sweat could be seen on Qian Lian Huang's forehead. However, she didn't stop comparing. Her pair of starry eyes kept scanning as she muttered to herself. She was quite serious. After a long while. Did you find anything? Lin Feng smiled. Qian Lian Huang nodded and pointed with her slender finger. The 10th and 12th words repeated. Among the 50 words, I found 5 similar words. First, we can eliminate them. Qian Lian Huang smiled and said, although I don't understand these tadpole words, these 9 words are most likely something common like innate treasures. Lin Feng smiled and nodded. It was a simple deduction. The 6th and 8th words also repeated. 3 of them were found in the comparison materials, so we can eliminate them too. The third one had 7 words. 2 of them were found in the comparison materials. Qian Lianhuang's analysis was clear and logical. Lin Feng listened carefully and nodded from time to time. Compared to him, Qian Lianhuang was more thoughtful and detailed. There was no mistake at all. In other words, the first, 6th, 9th, and 11th are the most likely. After listening to Qian Lianhuang's analysis, Lin Feng said thoughtfully, "The 9th one." Qian Lianhuang blinked her eyes playfully. "Oh," Lin Feng smiled and patted his forehead. The 9th one was where the parchment was made. Naturally, it was impossible for it to contain the path of the Sparrow King. In the 10,008 semi-independent spaces, the path of the Sparrow King must be unique. The first, 6th, and 11th one. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. The last 3 were the most likely. Now, there were 108 flame feathers left. According to the current situation, he could enter 4 times. It was just right. After all, if he could find the path of the Sparrow King, he and Qian Lianhuang would enter it again. If possible, it's best to eliminate 1 more. Lin Feng looked at Qian Lianhuang thoughtfully. Plans could not keep up with changes. Since the pinwheel imprint changed, it was hard to guarantee that it would change again. That would be troublesome. To be safe, the more he eliminated, the better. Qian Lianhuang nodded gently. If possible, try another 20 times. It's safer. Okay. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. Although he was a little tired, it was not a big problem to draw another 20 times. Soon, the drawing was completed. Apparently, his luck was quite good. In these 20 times, the 6th one was excluded. All that was left were the 1st and 11th chapters. I hope we're not wrong. Lin Feng looked at Qian Lianhuang and nodded slowly. It should be more than 90%. Qian Lianhuang smiled. Apparently, she was in a good mood. Good luck. Yes, good luck. Lin Feng smiled indifferently. Chapter 1120. The first to enter was Thousand Love Emperor. After consuming 24 flame feathers, she entered the semi-independent space indicated by the first text. Watching Thousand Love Emperor turn into light spots and disappear, Lin Feng smiled. Of course, he wouldn't be the first one to enter. Without his clone, Thousand Love Emperor wouldn't be able to enter. Perhaps she was knowledgeable and talented, but in terms of strength, she was still inferior to him. I wonder who will be luckier? Lin Feng smiled faintly, but he didn't care. He had 84 flame feathers left, enough to enter the semi-independent space 3 times. Of course, the premise was that the entry condition did not change. Clang! Lin Feng's eyes flickered. With his aura locked on, he instantly found the target light spot that the 11th text was pointing to. Boom! The avatar's unreasonable attacks easily broke through the power of the array that had just been formed. Light flashed violently, revealing the familiar spatial barrier. Hua! In his true state, Lin Feng's eyes were bright and full of vigor. A bright light flashed across his eyes. It changed. As expected, there are changes. Lin Feng thought. As far as the eye could see, the originally 2 windmill imprints on the smooth spatial barrier had now become 3. They were triangular, forming a unique shape. 36 flame feathers. It seems that every time I enter, I have to consume 12 flame feathers. Lin Feng thought. He was worried that the conditions would change again, and it turned out to be true. Fortunately, the situation was not out of control. 12, 24, 36. Lin Feng nodded slowly and calculated in his heart. If I want to enter again, I will need to consume 48 flame feathers. Lin Feng sighed softly. Soon after, he revealed a smile. Fortunately, he was still left with 84 flame feathers. 36 plus 48, he had 84 flame feathers. He could enter 2 more times. My luck is not bad, although the number of times I can enter has changed from 3 to 2. But the difference is not big. Recalling the selection, Lin Feng was slightly satisfied. Only the 1st and 11th chapters were left. Now that Thousand Love Empress had entered the 1st chapter, he would soon enter the 11th chapter. There was a high possibility that one of the two chapters would lead to the path of the Sparrow King. Once he and Qian Lianhuang had exited, one of the remaining 48 flame feathers would be able to enter the path of the Sparrow King. Although the process had changed, the result remained the same. But there are two prerequisites, Lin Feng said softly. Firstly, if there are more than 48 flame feathers in the fourth entry, then there's nothing we can do. Secondly, which is also the most important, his eyes sparkling, Lin Feng's hands lightly moved. The flaming feathers were quickly stuffed into the pinwheel imprint, and all 36 of them were consumed in an instant. Whoosh! Dazzling light burst forth, and a powerful suction force howled. One of the two half-independent spaces has to be the path of the Sparrow King. Lin Feng clenched his fists, and as the powerful suction force appeared, the clone returned to his body and was sucked in. Whoosh! His aura suddenly changed. What a rich fire energy. Lin Feng was shocked. Before his consciousness had fully recovered, he could already feel the extreme fire element around him, and the sound of explosions could be heard. As his consciousness gradually returned, he looked around and saw a red ocean. There were huge volcanoes as tall as the sky, and they were constantly spraying hot flames. Boom, boom, boom. It was like fireworks. There were more than 100 volcanoes, and each of them was huge. And this was just within his sight. How many huge volcanoes were there outside his sight? It was hard to estimate. The flames turned into magma and flowed out from the top of the volcanoes, turning the entire mountain into a fiery red color. There was land here, but it was fiery red. After being influenced by the flames for a long time, the land had already mutated, and there was no aura of the earth element. The magma flowed everywhere like blood-red, poisonous snakes, looking extremely ferocious. Could there be the Tao of the Sparrow King here? Lin Feng pondered in his heart. Looking around, he could see everything. There was a heavy pressure in the air, and the fire element was gathering crazily, far more than any other place. Even though his main body was so close to the flames, he could still feel the pressure. The fire element here was obviously beyond what he could handle. However, this was not important. Floating in the air, Lin Feng closed his eyes and calmed himself down. He knew his purpose for coming here. He wanted to find the legendary path of the Sparrow King, master it, and then break through 70% to become a saint. If the path of the Sparrow King was here, even if it was not in the spiritual energy, there would at least be some clues. Because this was a Tao. Just like the Tao of constellations and the Tao of saints, it was a kind of ideology, a kind of sensing ability. He focused his mind perfectly, and the surrounding flames turned into nothingness at this moment. Everything was no longer important. Closing his eyes tightly, Lin Feng even sealed his heart. All of his power turned into his senses, connecting with the entire world. His soul could sense the various elemental powers in the air, and the existence of Tao. Boom, boom, boom. The group of volcanoes would not stop erupting because of Lin Feng's arrival. Magma and fireballs were everywhere. Even Lin Feng, who was floating in the air, could not escape. However, every time a flame attack came, the flame of rebirth would appear and cancel it out. There was no need to use the Tao of Saints. It was already controlled by the heart. It was like holding chopsticks while eating. It had already become an instinct. And all of this had nothing to do with Lin Feng. Sealing his mind and entering a state of comprehension, Lin Feng was deeply comprehending the existence of Tao in this space. Minutes turned into seconds. Minutes turned into minutes. Time passed, 1 hour after another. Lin Feng was like an old monk in meditation. He did not move at all. His expression was solemn, and he maintained the same posture. Enveloped in flames soon, a day and a night passed. Lin Feng opened his eyes and frowned slightly. Indeed, there is a powerful existence of Tao. It seems to be related to me, but Lin Feng pursed his lips and muttered to himself, after spending a day and a night, I can't enter this Tao. I can see it, but I can't touch it. I can't step into it. Is this the Tao of Sparrow King? There were hundreds of questions in his heart. Lin Feng's expression was solemn, and he could not figure it out. In fact, he did not know much about the Tao of Sparrow King. He had only heard about it from Qian Lian Huang. Once one grasped the way of the Sparrow King, one would be able to break through to the saint tier immediately. Furthermore, the special eyes or special bones and tendons obtained from breaking through to the saint tier would be greatly improved. It was even more likely that one would comprehend new abilities or be bestowed with a special ability. What kind of Tao will it be? Lin Feng's eyes flashed. Since this place is called the Sparrow King Prison, it seems to have an inseparable connection with the path of the Sparrow King. Even though this grand formation is extremely complicated, and entering it is like entering a maze, its essence is very clear. The Tao of Strength and the Tao of Fire. Only these two Taos have ever appeared in this grand formation, Qin Wentian said. Lin Feng quickly analyzed. Even though the grand formation was extremely complicated, its heart had never changed from the start to the end. It was like the art of disguise. No matter how a warrior changed his appearance, his foundation, the source of his power, would not change at all. That was the power of the array. It was the power of strength and fire energy, the two core forces of heaven and earth. This included the flaming feather. The flaming energy and the strength contained in the feather were the same. Yes, Lin Feng thought for a while and quickly confirmed it. In this space, the existence of the Tao of Fire did not need to be sensed at all. He could see it just by looking. The energy of fire was extremely strong, and it was the main component. As for the Tao of Strength, Lin Feng fell into deep thought again. He could vaguely feel it, but it was not obvious. It would be a stretch to say that the two were the Tao of Sparrow King. It feels very different from the power of the array. Lin Feng nodded. Perhaps the Tao of Sparrow King was indeed composed of the Tao of Fire and the Tao of Strength. But how many Tao of Strength were there? Just based on what he knew, there were 7 types, and every single Tao of Strength had its own branches. As for the Tao of Flames, there were countless types. For example, his flames of rebirth, flames of devour, heavenly flames, netherworld flames, cyclone flames, and so on and so forth. Compared to the classification of the Tao of Strength, it wasn't inferior in the slightest. The number of Tao of Fire and Tao of Strength was so large that it was difficult to estimate. Not to mention that the two Tao of Fire and Tao of Strength were different. Even if it was the same combination of the Tao of Fire and Tao of Strength, there would be at least hundreds of millions of variations. Countless variations. Tao of Fire and Tao of Strength. Lin Feng hesitated. After a long time, his eyes flashed and he nodded. My original body has a strong feeling for fire, but I have no feeling for Tao of Strength. Since I have nothing to do, I might as well let my clone comprehend it together, but I have never tried it before. Lin Feng smiled. He had never tried to cultivate and comprehend it with his clone. After all, cultivation required full concentration and concentration. Although it was possible to multitask, the effect would be reduced. But now, it is not considered comprehension. It should be a kind of step-in. Whoosh! His clone appeared instantly. Standing face to face in the air, Lin Feng's eyes lit up. Without wasting any time, his original body and his clone began to cultivate at the same time, looking for an opportunity to step in. Step into that Tao. The process of cultivation was very boring. However, it was an unavoidable path for every martial artist. If one wanted to become stronger, they had to keep cultivating and cultivating. Time passed day by day. Lin Feng's comprehension slowly increased unknowingly. As his clones stepped in together, the blurry path in his mind gradually lit up. However, it was not his original body that lit up, but his clone that had become a saint and was far stronger than his original body. In an instant, the clone trembled slightly. Under the illumination of the flames, in an instant, a strange phenomenon appeared. Chapter 11:21. Peng. His mind was in a mess. Lin Feng opened his eyes, radiating light. It was not a change in his main body, but a change in his clone. A high-pitched screech sounded in his ears, and a blurry figure appeared in his mind. But this was the third time it appeared. The sharp screech seemed to pierce through his eardrums, straight into his mind, bringing him into a strange space. It was brought in. It was as if a gust of wind had pulled him in. It was a starry sky world, a bright light. It was very familiar. This. Lin Feng was shocked. In front of him, the top of the 7 light spots was shining brightly, while the other 6 main stars were dull. The unique constellation formed the shape of a giant bear. It was the Ursa Major constellation that his clone belonged to, but the destination that brought him was not the 7 main stars, but the small stars in between the 7 main stars. One of the stars was shining brightly. It was clearly visible. This feeling was very familiar to him. It was something that he had experienced before in the Phoenix constellation. Mystery. The real mystery. The mystery that was necessary to break through to the Saint King realm. Xiao. Like a sharp arrow, his mind was instantly immersed in it. Lin Feng was shocked. Such a dense, killing aura. With a thought, his consciousness entered the layer of mystery. It was filled with killing aura, crazily pouring into his mind. The majestic aura spread out, causing his heart to beat faster. It was the Tao of Slaughter, Ursa Major constellation, one of the 3 Tao of strength that he had comprehended. This mystery pointed to the existence of the Tao of Slaughter. The main body entered a state of nothingness. It floated in the air, but did not have any consciousness. At this moment, Lin Feng's consciousness was focused on his clone. Although the development of the situation was unexpected, regardless of whether it was the main body or the clone, they were all powers that belonged to him. In this strange world, any kind of existence that he had comprehended was not ordinary. The Tao of Strength. If the Tao of Slaughter is a Tao of cultivation, then it is the extension of the Tao, the existence that can fully unleash the power of the Tao of Slaughter. Mystery. Sparrow Kill. Lin Feng was completely immersed in his excitement. This kind of cultivation comprehension was something that could only be encountered by chance, because it wasn't comprehended through the normal way. Instead, it was just as he had expected. Step in. To be more precise, it should be brought in. Using the power of this space, he was brought into a state of comprehension. It was as if there was a master teaching him step by step. Even if he didn't learn it himself, the knowledge in the books would be forcefully stuffed into his mind to comprehend this layer of mystery. Lin Feng had entered a state of complete comprehension. At that moment, the martial artists in Sparrow King Prison were also seizing the time to cultivate. Throughout the land of miracles, all the martial artists participating in the Vermilion Bird Challenge were busy searching for their own opportunities. However, the Vermilion Bird Realm, the Vermilion Bird Continent, and the entire 9 states were in an uproar. Along with the abdication of Emperor Shun, the news of the competition for the throne spread out like a tidal wave, causing the entire southern region to be filled with heated discussions. This had never happened before in the history of the human race. Emperor Shun could be said to have created a new model, but no one knew which was good and which was bad. The strong were respected. The faction led by second senior brother, King Lu, was secretly preparing. As the most likely contender for the throne, King Lu wasn't in a hurry. Instead, he waited patiently. In the southern region, countless martial saints who lived in seclusion couldn't hold back and came out to try. This time, there were no conditions to participate in the Emperor Throne competition. Of course, the strength of a martial saint was a must. If star sector-level martial artists participated, they would be looking for trouble. There were no martial saints. It was a competition between martial saints. It was extremely lively. After all, everyone had a chance. The 8 Great Territories Alliance of the human race. Alliance leader, the Witch Emperor has given us instructions. What should we do next? Elder Lu asked. Don't worry. Tell the Witch Emperor that we are determined to get the southern region. Zhuo Bufan nodded slowly, and a glint flashed across his eyes. As a gift to join the witch race, it must be perfect. Only then can we show our leadership strength and be put in an important position by the witch race. Elder Lu's eyes lit up. Alliance leader, are you going to do it yourself? With a faint smile, Zwabufon's lips curled up slightly with confidence. There's no need to use a sledgehammer to kill a chicken. How can a small southern region escape from my palm? It's just that. Zwabufon frowned slightly. There was still a hint of doubt in his eyes. It's just that what? Elder Lu asked. Zwabufon raised his head slightly and looked at Elder Lu. Previously, I thought that Shun was cutting off his wrist. However, recently, after thinking about it, I keep feeling that something is wrong. If it was Emperor Yao who made such a decision, it wouldn't be surprising. However, Shun is a kind-hearted person, and his actions are watertight. It's impossible for him to make such a risky decision. Elder Lu nodded. Perhaps he had no choice. Alliance leader, you might as well put yourself in his shoes and think about it. At that time, there was indeed no better way. After pondering for a while, Zwabufon smiled. Perhaps I'm too suspicious. Forget it. This matter has reached a dead end. No matter how capable he is, he can't make up for this flaw. A bright light flashed in his eyes. Zwabufon was confident. The southern region, I'm determined to obtain it. Elder Lu smiled slightly, but there was a different kind of smile in his eyes. He didn't suspect anything, right? An old voice slowly sounded. Don't worry, Sacred Master. Elder Lu smiled and cupped his hands. I guess he would never have thought that the southern region would not only not be a blessing for him, but also a great disaster. After pausing for a moment, Elder Lu shook his head. It's a pity that according to Zwabufon's words, he won't participate in this Emperor Throne tournament. It's fine. The voice was still cold. I have my own way, the voice slowly said. In this sealed space, the Black Shadow's voice was bone-chilling, but Elder Lu's eyes flashed. No one else knew about the conversation between the two. After a long while, Sacred Master's brilliant plan. Elder Lu cupped his hands and was sincerely convinced. You must handle this matter properly. The voice in the darkness was slightly hoarse. Don't worry, Sacred Master. Elder Lu smiled faintly and suddenly asked curiously, Sacred Master, are you planning to participate in the Emperor Throne tournament personally? Jia Jia. The warrior hidden in the darkness laughed strangely and said slowly, You don't have to worry about this. I have my own arrangements. You just have to do what I ask you to do. After this matter is done, the position of the leader of the Human Alliance's 9 great territories will be yours. Elder Lu's eyes instantly lit up. Thank you, Sacred Master. Wind and clouds surged. Even though the entire human world was facing a great enemy, they were still fighting both openly and covertly. The disharmony of the human race seemed to have cast a shadow over this long-awaited war. However, no one knew how it would end. Just like the previous 2 Lich Demon wars, the demon race, who had the absolute advantage, had no choice but to swallow the bitter fruit. Perhaps on the surface, it was a draw, but in reality, the demon race was at a disadvantage. However, in the boundless sea, where they could attack or retreat, the demon race was firmly in an invincible position. Now, the demon race, who had learned from their painful experience, had made a comeback. Naturally, there were different changes. This was especially so for the newly appointed commander. He was a newly appointed official who made drastic changes. He had taken the crown of the commander tournament and climbed to the top with a domineering aura that convinced all the demon race experts. This included the second-place winner of the commander tournament, the Bull Demon, who had become sworn brothers with him. The combination of the strong and the powerful boosted the morale of the entire demon race. The demon race's 4 royal families, 5 royal families, and 12 demon stars had all submitted and supported him. In the face of right and wrong, the demon race united against the external forces. To them, what they had always believed and had not changed. From a history of the demon race's development, it could be seen that the continuation of the demon race had spread like a big tree, blooming and occupied the boundless sea. There was only one principle that the demon race had always followed. The strong were respected. The human race was in constant internal strife. The ancient race was accumulating strength. The witch race was leading the 3 major human races to build a solid defense. The demon race was united. All the demon race experts were frantically preparing for war under the leadership of the new commander, the Great Sage. They were making final preparations and sprinting for the third great Lich Demon War. The demon race army was gathering. The entire boundless sea was boiling with battle intent. However, at this moment, Lin Feng was unaware that he was in the Sparrow King prison. As far as he was concerned, he couldn't see or hear anything. The only thing he cared about was cultivation and enlightenment. He had grasped the mystery, Sparrow Kill. Time continued to pass. Even if this path seemed to be guided by someone, the profundity of this path was simply too profound. It was like a book with too much content and too complicated. Even if one did not need to understand it, it was not easy to memorize it. The mystery, Sparrow Kill, was much more complicated and difficult than the Phoenix constellation's mystery, Jalawa's true body. However, as the saying goes, no pain, no gain. The difficulty of a mystery was usually proportional to its power. This was especially so for such a complicated and profound mystery. Hard work paid off. Slowly, under the constant infusion of spatial energy and guidance, Lin Feng gradually memorized the mystery. Even though it was just one step at a time, he gradually saw the end. No, it should be called a transit point. This was because this path was rather long. Just like the mystery of Jalawa's true body, there was still a long way to go. But at least now, he had comprehended it. He had truly stepped on this path and opened a door. So, this is Sparrow Kill, Lin Feng murmured softly. Images kept appearing in his mind. Although he could not perfectly replay them like his main body, his understanding of the Tao was very clear. He already had a preliminary understanding of the power system. He could control the Tao of Massacre and use its power. Very powerful. It's really powerful. It's much more powerful than Jalawa's true body. Ha! Lin Feng clenched his fists. He felt the power flowing in his body and was deeply shocked. This could definitely increase the strength of his avatar by another level. It was a terrifying mystery. Chapter 1122. He had gained a lot. Lin Feng smiled. Compared to breaking through to the 70% Saint Realm, it might be a little lacking, but it's still better than getting an unknown sheepskin with strange words written on it, right? A relaxed smile appeared on Lin Feng's face. He was in a good mood. At least, he didn't come for nothing. Moreover, he didn't know what breaking through 70% meant or how helpful the path of the Sparrow King would be to him. Maybe it wouldn't even be as good as the Sparrow Kill. Moreover, it was an indisputable fact that his main body was weaker than his clone. Whether it was his father, mother, Xiao, or Duo and his master, they all needed a strong backing. It was good to be able to make his strongest point stronger. The truth of the Tao of strength in this space has been revealed. The path of flame should be emitted from these flaming mountains and formed after a long time of suppression. Indeed, it's very different from the power of formations. But this is not where the path of the Sparrow King is. Lin Feng said softly. Although it was a pity, it was the truth. The path of the Sparrow King, as the name suggested, must have a deep connection with the Sparrow King prison, which was the Great Formation. It was most likely similar to the power of formations. Since there was no formation here, the path of the Sparrow King naturally wouldn't exist. There was only one kind of spirit chi in a space, especially in a formation. I wonder how Thousand Love Emperor is now. I hope she can comprehend the path of the Sparrow King and get what she wants. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. Since it wasn't here, it was very likely that it was in the semi-independent space where Thousand Love Emperor was. He put all his hope on her. Leave? Lin Feng hesitated for a moment and immediately rejected it. His intuition told him that this semi-independent space shouldn't only be like this. If it was just a place for cultivation, why would there be such a huge group of volcanoes? Moreover, he comprehended the path of strength, but most of the aura here was the aura of flames, including the entire space. There were flaming mountains everywhere. This was a world of flames. There must be some secrets. It's possible. Who knows? There might be some rare treasures. Lin Feng smiled calmly. Although he wasn't very interested in treasures, it didn't stop him from exploring. Taking risks was a very exciting activity in itself, especially in a place like this. There could be danger at any moment or surprise. Whoosh! Lin Feng broke through the air, shuttling through the flames. He did not feel uncomfortable at all. The fire of engulfment continued to be released, absorbing the flames that were bombarding him like poisonous snakes. He controlled the power of the fire of engulfment so that its replenishment and consumption were maintained at an average level. We must be cautious. Last time, it was because of the excessive consumption of the devouring fire that led to my defeat. Lin Feng said softly. He couldn't make the same mistake twice. Flaming Mountain. Wow, it's really huge. Lin Feng floated in the air and looked up. It was a flame mountain that was much larger than he had imagined. What he had seen earlier was already big enough, but that size was based on the distance. Now that he was close to it, it was not just huge, it was so huge that it was extremely frightening. There was almost no end in sight. Fiery red lava kept rolling down from the top of the mountain. It was extremely hot. Whoosh! Whoosh! Lin Feng dodged nimbly and did not take it head-on. The natural fire energy was quite terrifying. If he used the fire of engulfment to take it head-on, he might be able to absorb it, but the consumption would be huge. Under the current uncertain situation, this was irrational. No wonder the fire elements here are so dense and dense. Seems like it's all thanks to these flame mountains. But Lin Feng looked around curiously. The flame mountains that he could see were tens of times denser and larger, but it was because he was much closer. However, other than the flames, there seemed to be nothing else here. It was quite strange. No danger. Lin Feng frowned. It was just the environment that was dangerous. Although the flames were strong, no one was controlling them. Not to mention him. Even ordinary cosmic sector-level warriors could dodge them. This was very abnormal. Not to mention that this was one of the largest semi-independent spaces in the third level of the Sparrow King prison. Even if he entered the semi-independent space that only required 3 flame feathers, he would be attacked by a considerable number of beasts. It was much more dangerous than this place. According to Qian Lian Huang, the process of her obtaining the parchment was also very frightening and dangerous. However, this place was peaceful. The more peaceful it was, the more dangerous it was. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. He was very wary. This feeling was very uncomfortable. There are 2 possibilities. The first one is indeed not dangerous. But if there is no danger, how can there be gains? This formation shouldn't allow people to reap without putting in any effort. The possibility is very small. Then, there is only the second possibility. Lin Feng clenched his fists. Danger there must be, and this danger might exist in a place that he had not discovered yet. I have to be very careful. Lin Feng frowned and stopped underestimating this place. He looked at the volcanoes around him. The lava was like the flames of a giant. If this flame was controlled by someone and attacked him, it might be quite troublesome. I have to find out where the danger is first. Otherwise, I won't be able to eat or sleep in peace. Lin Feng pursed his lips. He slowed down. Lin Feng moved forward slowly. The surrounding volcanoes covered the sky. The sky seemed to be burning with a fiery red color. Only when he entered did he realize how amazing these volcanoes were. What he saw before was just a drop in the ocean. There were so many volcanoes here. There were countless of them. The lava with rich fire energy flowed everywhere. Lin Feng kept releasing the engulfing fire. If I cultivate here, the engulfing fire will improve very quickly. Lin Feng smiled. The fastest way to improve the engulfing fire was to absorb flames. Especially this kind of powerful flame without an owner, it could be perfectly absorbed. He kept moving forward. The journey was safe and sound. However, Lin Feng became more and more uneasy. He looked around, and his expression became more and more solemn. This feeling was like the calm before the storm. Lin Feng's chest heaved up and down as he landed. His heartbeat became heavier and heavier. His intuition told him that something was about to happen. What was it? The light in Lin Feng's eyes kept changing. He looked around and found that it was similar to when he entered. There were still volcanoes everywhere. The difference was that he was now in the depths of the volcanoes. He was closer and could sense the fire element more intensely. Also, Lin Feng's eyes lit up. He looked at the ground. The color was much darker than when he entered. This is... Lin Feng's right hand touched his chin. His eyes flashed. He seemed to have discovered something. Whoosh! He landed quickly. Lin Feng landed on the ground. He squatted down and touched the ground with his fingers. That's right. The temperature of the ground is very high. The fire element content is much higher than before. No, it's close to 10 times. No wonder the color is so dark. Lin Feng thought. Suddenly, a thought popped up in his mind. I understand now. Lin Feng's eyes flickered as he suddenly understood. At this moment, boom, 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 the ground suddenly shook violently. The terrifying shaking shook the entire space. It was as if the end of the world was coming. It came without any warning. The sky was covered in red clouds. The surrounding volcanoes seemed to come alive. The speed of the lava flowing out of the volcanoes increased by dozens of times. As expected, Lin Feng's eyes were burning. He looked serious. Without hesitation, the rebirth flame burst out. He looked around and retreated quickly. Almost at the same time, the volcanoes erupted. Boom, boom, rumble. It was a true volcanic eruption. Terrifying flames instantly shot out to the limit, as if tens of millions of cannons were firing at the same time. The crazy fire elements condensed into a fierce big fireball, appearing in the sky like the sun, as if it wanted to burn the sky into ashes. Boom! The fireball exploded and broke into pieces. It turned into countless fireballs and shot around at an extremely fast speed. If he was in the air, there would only be one result, death. Fortunately, Lin Feng felt lucky. In the sky, the falling fireballs were equally terrifying. The energy of the flames was extremely terrifying. However, he was at the bottom after all. There was a lot of space for him to dodge. In addition, the distance between him and the huge fireball was quite far. Even if the sky was falling and the earth was cracking and the flames were overflowing, his position was very safe. Moreover, the flames kept falling from the sky. They would be damaged on the way down. As for the rest, he was completely capable of blocking them. Boom, boom, boom. The volcanic eruption didn't end. The first giant volcano was only the beginning. The eruption of the volcanoes after that was the real highlight of the show. The volcanoes erupted one after another, shocking the entire space. The originally rich fire element energy was now dozens of times stronger. The surrounding colors were all the color of flames. However, Lin Feng easily dodged them. It's dangerous, but not dangerous. Lin Feng smiled calmly. The real danger was actually the first moment the volcanoes erupted. If one wasn't prepared or was in the air, they would encounter the extremely terrifying and irresistible power of nature. From the earthquake to the eruption of the volcano, everything happened in an instant. There was no time for anyone to be prepared for it. However, it was very simple now, because he only needed to face the dozens of volcanoes around him. The other volcanoes were so far away. No matter how violent the eruption was, it didn't matter to him. The fire element here is so rich. This means that the eruption of the volcanoes is much more intense than the outside. So, this is the danger of this semi-independent space. Lin Feng smiled slightly. After knowing, he didn't need to worry anymore. Any danger could be mitigated as long as he could guard against it. Moreover, where there is danger, there is opportunity. Lin Feng raised his head and looked at the flames with bright eyes. Very good. Chapter 1123. This extremely dangerous and crazily erupting volcano proved one thing. That meant that his guess was correct. The path of Sparrow, slaying hidden in the spirit chi, was probably not the most precious thing in this semi-independent space. It was just an evolution of the path of massacre in the path of strength. It was just a change in strength, similar to the change in flames. In other words, the treasure in this semi-independent space still existed. Such rich fire energy. Wouldn't it be a pity to waste it? Lin Feng smiled faintly, his eyes twinkling. With a thought, he shouted, "Come out, Hong Ling!" In an instant, a huge dragon covered in fiery red scales, as though it was wrapped in raging flames, appeared. Its huge body completely covered the entire sky. The appearance of the red ribbon caused the apocalyptic eruption of the flaming mountain to become even more powerful. Boom, boom, boom. A large number of fireballs fell, densely packed. With Hong Ling's size, he could not dodge at all. In fact, he was not good at dodging. However, he had a unique ability. Engulf. Such fire energy was the best supplement for Hong Ling roar. Hong Ling roared at the sky. It was not fear in his roar, but excitement. As long as what he engulfed did not exceed his limit, Hong Ling could engulf everything. It was even more terrifying than the engulfing fire because Hong Ling himself, this was the fastest way to increase his strength. It saves me a lot of effort. Killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Lin Feng smiled faintly. He stood comfortably under Hong Ling. The flames could not reach him at all. With Hong Ling as a shield, it was simply a natural barrier. The volcano erupted crazily, and Hong Ling engulfed the fire energy crazily. The rich energy entered his huge body, constantly filling up his empty body. Such fire energy far exceeded the limit of the engulfing fire, but Hong Ling still absorbed it all. Hong Ling did not improve much in the Earth-type ancient Forbidden Land, but it is completely different here. Lin Feng smiled faintly. As he fought, Hong Ling, Wing, Refined Puppet, and the 100-poison-colored python naturally became stronger. The eruption of the volcano lasted for 2 hours, and to Hong Ling, these 2 hours were far better than 10 years of bitter cultivation. No matter how much fire energy entered its body, it was like a bottomless pit, completely unable to fill its stomach. This was because Hong Ling was an existence that could advance. When its body was completely saturated, it would be the day that its strength would advance. This was the unique characteristic of Hong Ling. Perhaps normal cultivation was very difficult, but as long as there was enough energy for it to devour, Hong Ling's strength would rapidly increase. Just like the other battle snakes that entered the kingdom of Meru from the Thousand Snake Cave that day, they could continuously make breakthroughs and improve their strength in a short period of time. He was not in a hurry. Lin Feng waited patiently. Only when the red silk was completely digested and the surrounding fire elements returned to normal did they continue their journey. There was more than enough time. However, there was only one chance. "Let's go." Lin Feng smiled calmly. Just as he was about to continue forward, his heart suddenly moved. It was Hong Ling. This way, they communicated telepathically. Lin Feng was quite surprised. Hong Ling had never communicated with him like this before. This was because its intelligence was not high. Although it was already at the peak of the star sector level, its intelligence was only that of an ordinary child, different from other star sector level beasts. Battle snakes were a very special type of demon beast. Because it was a contracted demon beast, Hong Ling had always listened to him. But this time, looking at Hong Ling, Lin Feng smiled casually and nodded. "Okay, lead the way." He did not have any doubts. Just like how Hong Ling trusted him completely, he also trusted Hong Ling completely. Perhaps, in terms of intelligence, it was indeed not high, but since Hong Ling had such a judgment, it must have its reasons for choosing. It was just that now, it still did not know how to express itself. However, he believed in it. They changed to another path. Lin Feng followed Hong Ling closely, but did not relax. After experiencing it once, he naturally knew that the danger here could descend at any time. He must not let his guard down. Flying in the air, he first had to ensure that he had enough time to land on the ground in an instant to avoid being injured by the volcanic eruption. However, he was worrying too much. Suddenly, Lin Feng was slightly startled. Hong Ling, who was galloping, slowed down inexplicably, and in an instant, it stopped descending. In his heart, a voice was telling him that another violent volcanic eruption was about to come. Lin Feng looked at Hong Ling in surprise. but he did not know how it could sense this. Just as this thought appeared in his mind, the feeling of an earthquake hit him again in an instant. Oh! Lin Feng's eyes lit up. However, he did not have time to think about why Hong Ling could sense it. Whoosh! Like a shooting star, Lin Feng quickly landed on the ground. His reaction speed was quite fast. Lin Feng was slightly startled. He saw that Hong Ling did not land with him. Instead, it bravely approached the volcanic crater and rapidly ascended. This was a very risky move. Greedy, Lin Feng smiled. How could he not know what Hong Ling was thinking? The volcanic eruption was the most violent with the volcanic crater's energy. When it was spat out and condensed into a big fireball was the peak state. It scattered in all directions, or turned into a fireball and fell down. Endless magma flowed, which would reduce the power of the flame energy. Hong Ling, on the other hand, wanted to capture the flame energy before it was used up too much. This was something that ordinary warriors and even saint-level existences could not do, but Hong Ling could do it with its unique ability. Boom! Boom! In an instant, the volcano erupted again. In the sky, the rich flame energy was completely boiling. Faster, more violent. The frequency was even more intense. Even the color of the earth is much more profound. Lin Feng thought to himself. At this moment, fireballs were flying everywhere. The volcanoes erupted violently again. This time, it was much more violent than the last time, and its power was many times stronger. At the same time, countless volcanoes erupted together, spraying flames. It was a spectacular scene that had never been seen before. The engulfing flames glowed. Lin Feng's expression was calm. Engulfing the flames that Hong Ling had escaped was not a difficult task for him. Occupying the sky, Hong Ling was as dazzling as the sun. Not only did its huge body not bring any inconvenience to its movements, but it also allowed Hong Ling to have a super capacity that other magical beasts did not have. Engulfing the flames crazily to the limit. Even though the volume was so large, Hong Ling still treated it as if it was nothing. Engulfing the flames was like eating to it. Hong Ling's aura continued to grow stronger. If Hong Ling's comprehension ability is enough, here it can definitely advance to saint level. With such abundant flame energy, whether it is cultivation or comprehension, it will be half the result with twice the effort. Lin Feng's eyes shone, and he sighed slightly. Of course, it was not easy. Its unique cultivation method made it easy for Hong Ling to cultivate. However, breaking through to saint level was its biggest bottleneck. This was because its intelligence was too low. It was like a child's intelligence. It was not easy for it to comprehend the complicated and abstruse existence of Tao. If it was gained, it would definitely be lost. The space environment here was extremely beneficial to martial artists who cultivated the Tao of fire. However, it was of little help to him now. He already had two types of flames, both of which were the best flames in the Phoenix constellation. His star power was already overflowing, and he had already comprehended the various Tao of saints. His 7 main stars were cultivated to perfection. It could be said that it would be difficult for him to advance to star sector level. The current him was already standing in front of the path to saint level. Moreover, there was more than one path in front of him. As long as he was willing, he could choose any path. He could easily break through, perfectly past. With Hong Ling's existence, which was like a black hole, the eruption of the volcano was a joke. Not only did it not cause any harm to him, but also became a supplement for Hong Ling and him. No matter how strong the power was, as long as it did not exceed Hong Ling's strength, there would be no problem. Blocking and absorbing, it was only a matter of time. He continued to move forward. What could it be? Lin Feng's eyes shone. He was getting more and more curious. What kind of precious existence was hidden in the depths of the volcano? Innate treasure? Secret manual? Rare star fruit? Or some kind of rare material? He could not guess. However, he could imagine that it was absolutely precious and one of a kind. This was something that he and Thousand Love Empress were certain of when they were filtering and eliminating it. Even if it was not the Tao of Sparrow King, it would definitely be in existence on par with it. They continued to move through the volcano group. During this period, the volcano erupted 3 more times. In addition to the previous 2 eruptions, there were a total of 5 eruptions. Each eruption was stronger than the previous one. Hongling's absorption and eating was also more nourishing than the previous one. It was unusually full. Boom, boom, boom. The heavens fell and the earth cracked. The volcanoes erupted for the 6th time. From dozens of eruptions to hundreds of eruptions, now there were thousands of eruptions. At the same time, there were hundreds of eruptions. The power of nature could only be described with one word: terrifying. Extremely terrifying. Once one was in the middle of the eruption, only death would await them. However, Hongling was an exception. Not only was it not in danger, but it was also happily absorbing the energy. It was full of joy. Its stomach was like a bottomless pit. It could not be filled no matter how hard it tried. After 5 consecutive eruptions, there was still no end to its absorption. Its appetite was equally terrifying, until the 6th eruption came to an end. What a rich energy! Lin Feng's eyes flickered as he looked at the sky. The rich energy was not the volcano energy. Instead, it was the energy emitted by Hongling. It was like a water tank that was filled with water and was about to overflow. A familiar energy spread out from Hongling's body. There seemed to be a holy aura and a rich flame energy. At this moment, the color of the sky seemed to change. This is... Lin Feng looked at the sky in shock. It can't be. Chapter 1124. Hongling was about to break through? This was the sign of becoming a saint. Lin Feng was completely stunned and a little confused. He could understand why Hongling had absorbed so much. It was just like when he cultivated to the peak of the star sector level. He was very familiar with this feeling. However, Hongling's intelligence was so low that it couldn't comprehend any Tao of the saint. How could it break through? He couldn't figure it out. Pursing his lips, Lin Feng looked at the flashing flames in the sky. Hongling was currently transforming. Their hearts were connected, so he could feel Hongling's transformation. Right now, the truth was right in front of him. Hongling was about to become a saint. Unbelievable. Lin Feng's lips curled up. He didn't expect Hongling to break through before him and become a saint. In his mind's perception, a strange flame energy spread out. It was a flame that was completely different from his own devouring flame and rebirth flame. It had a rather violent and powerful aura that was filled with explosive energy. It was the power of slaughter. Lin Feng was stunned. Why was this aura so familiar? It seemed to have the same effect as the Tao of sparrow killing that he had comprehended. Could it be? Looking up, Lin Feng looked at Hongling and the changes in its light. The huge figure was completely wrapped in flames, like a phoenix rising from the ashes. The dazzling light condensed the powerful Tao of fire. It was the arrival of the Tao of heaven. Although he couldn't see Hongling's transformation in the light, he could vaguely feel it. I understand now. Instantly, Lin Feng understood. Similar to the Tao of sparrow killing, there is a similar Tao of fire in this space. It has the same energy as the volcano. Hongling could comprehend it because it was like me. It didn't comprehend it on its own, but stepped in. Lin Feng laughed. He finally understood. Wasn't the Tao of sparrow killing that he comprehended also brought in by the space energy? Since it could bring him in, it could also bring Hongling in. The difference was that he could comprehend it on his own. Stepping into the Tao of sparrow killing was like icing on the cake. However, Hongling stepping in was truly a timely help. This was of utmost importance to Hongling. It was also very important to him, because Hongling was one of his most important companions. Congratulations. Lin Feng smiled. Although Hongling might not have heard him, this was the only thing he wanted to say. It was not easy to become a saint. The descent of the heavenly Tao was like a form of acknowledgement, a form of coronation. The resplendent light in the sky had long since covered the volcanoes. In front of the power of the heavens, everything else had to stand aside. Lin Feng raised his head with a faint smile on his face. Seeing the dazzling light disappear bit by bit, he understood what had happened. He was about to do the same. He had broken through and become a saint. The bright light dimmed bit by bit. In his heart, the feeling was getting stronger and stronger. It was as if a unique life force had broken out of cocoon. It felt extremely familiar. It was Hong Ling's life. Whoosh! In the sky, rays of light shone brightly. Master! A calm, emotionless voice sounded beside her ear. Lin Feng was slightly stunned. He did not hear it wrongly. That was indeed the voice in his ear, not in his heart. The light in front of him slowly dimmed and dissipated like mist. A rich aura and energy instantly appeared in front of him. It was a tall woman dressed in red dragon scale clothes. She had a head of fiery red short hair and was not wearing any other clothes. Her chest was bare and her stomach was exposed. The dragon scales on the dragon scale clothes were strangely familiar. They vaguely covered her perfect figure. Her chest was extremely perky, far beyond the standards of ordinary humans. Even Qian Lian Huang's perfect figure paled in comparison. Her appearance was flawless, especially her eyes that had a fiery red glow. Coupled with the dragon scale crown on her forehead and the fiery red battle snake mark on her forehead, she looked even more valiant. She was Hong Ling. Looking at the sexy beauty in front of him, Lin Feng did not react for a long time. No matter how he looked at it, it was difficult to connect her with the Pang Rant's ultimate giant dragon. Even if he knew that Hong Ling was female, after transforming into a human, it was really shocking. It was completely beyond his imagination. Hong Ling, Lin Feng asked tentatively. The red-haired beauty nodded slightly and knelt on one knee. She said seriously, Hong Ling greets master. No need to be so polite. Lin Feng smiled helplessly. Looking at Hong Ling's sexy body, he said, although you are a contracted magical beast, you are a companion. There is no need to be so reserved. Yes, master. Hong Ling's expression was still calm, as if she did not know how to smile. No feelings? This thought suddenly appeared in Lin Feng's mind, but he didn't know why it came to him. But looking at Hong Ling, it seemed to be true. He could not feel any fluctuation in her emotions at all. A battle snake might be a little special, Lin Feng said softly. Hong Ling's aura had not been restrained. She had already broken through to become a saint. Her intelligence was no longer that of a child. She was no different from a normal person. When magical beasts and spiritual beings broke through and gained intelligence, it would definitely be related to the first human they came into contact with. Just like Wing, Hong Ling's intelligence would definitely be affected by him. Hong Ling, you advanced by comprehending the way of the saint. Lin Feng suddenly asked as he recalled his doubts. Yes, the fire of Sparrow Kill. Hong Ling answered. As expected, Lin Feng's eyes brightened. It should have the same effect as his own Tao of sparrow killing. Did you comprehend it yourself? Lin Feng asked again. No. Hong Ling shook her head expressionlessly. I continuously absorbed the fire of Sparrow Kill until I reached the limit and broke through. Fire of Sparrow Kill. It should be the fire of the volcano. Lin Feng said. His eyes lit up and he nodded. I think the way of the saint of the fire of Sparrow Kill should be integrated into the fire. Hong Ling continuously absorbed, and the way of the saint was like a picture pieced together and gradually pieced together. She broke through by comprehending it. That's not bad. Lin Feng smiled faintly. Regardless of the process, at least the result was good. To Hong Ling, the most difficult thing was to cultivate before her spiritual intelligence was to break through and become a saint. Now that she had become a saint and her spiritual intelligence was fully activated, she could naturally cultivate and improve normally. The biggest drawback and shortcoming from before no longer existed. She had already crossed that barrier. This was great news. By the way, Hong Ling, did you show me the way before? Lin Feng asked as he thought of it. Before he broke through, he had felt Hong Ling's consciousness. At that time, He couldn't ask, and Hong Ling wouldn't answer. But now she could. Yes, master. Hong Ling's expression was serious as she pointed ahead. There is an extremely powerful energy there. The sparkling fire flickered. Hong Ling's expression seemed to be illusory. Her gaze landed on Lin Feng and moved slightly as she pondered. Indeed, it was similar to what he had guessed. Hong Ling's senses couldn't be wrong. Especially now that she had become a saint, her strength had increased by another level. There was indeed a rare existence in this semi-independent space. Lead the way. Lin Feng smiled faintly and didn't hesitate for too long. Now that Hong Ling's strength had increased again, her chances of obtaining this treasure had undoubtedly increased greatly. Moreover, Hong Ling knew the location of the treasure clearly. The air was getting thinner and thinner, and the proportion of fire elements was getting larger and larger. Sizzle, sizzle. Fire elements could be seen everywhere like thunder, without any pattern. It was as if a group of children were playing. Lin Feng stood on Hong Ling's back and moved forward rapidly like a whirlwind. Now, Hong Ling had transformed into a battle snake. She transformed from a giant dragon again. Instead of becoming bigger, she became smaller, but it was as if her essence was condensed within. The dragon horns on her head had long disappeared. Now, Hong Ling was a real snake. Battle snake. Slip, slip, slip. Hong Ling swam around her body, nimbly avoiding the exploding fireballs. The faint light of the sparrow slaying fire surrounded her body. To Hong Ling, this was a piece of cake. She didn't even need to dodge. This was because they were the same type of power. She's quite attentive, Lin Feng said softly, his eyes shining. How could he not know that Hong Ling was avoiding the flames for his sake? With her strength, she could just charge straight ahead. There was no need for her to dodge. Although she could transform into a human, Hong Ling was used to fighting in her original form. Moreover, magical beasts could only unleash their strongest strength with their original form, not their incarnation. Transforming into a human was just a more convenient state for her to cultivate. Strange. There hasn't been a volcanic eruption for a long time. Lin Feng was secretly surprised. It had been a few hours since the last volcanic eruption. It was far longer than the interval between volcanic eruptions. It was indeed strange. Looking around, various fire elements were exploding and leaking. The space here seemed to be squeezed into pieces. The density of the fire elements was undoubtedly exposed. Lin Feng's expression slowly turned serious. This feeling was very uncomfortable. It was like the calm before the storm. This was the precursor. Perhaps there was going to be a huge storm, and the target was him. Hong Ling, Lin Feng said softly. Yes, master. The clear female voice was still emotionless. How long until that powerful energy? Lin Feng frowned slightly. 15 minutes. Hong Ling's voice was unstable. Oh. Lin Feng's eyes flashed with a faint light. It was close at hand. 15 minutes passed in the blink of an eye. The power of the fire elements was getting stronger and stronger. The shocking explosion seemed to be about to shatter this space. As they continued to move forward, the group of volcanoes in front of them seemed to have disappeared in an instant. Even the land was gone. Instead, it was replaced by blazing flames. Lin Feng was slightly shocked. In front of them was a fiery red ocean. The flames burned continuously and covered the entire space. As Hong Ling continued to move forward, riding the wind and breaking the waves, the scene suddenly became clear. Within the extremely dense flames, there was only one existence that appeared in front of them in an instant. Hiss! Lin Feng was completely stunned. Chapter 1125. A flaming mountain. A real flaming mountain. There was no other color, only a fiery red color. Lava boiled as it stood tall in the sea of fire. The huge flaming mountain completely blocked his line of sight. At this moment, it was as if this was the only existence left in the world. The majestic mountain range stood tall in the sea of fire. Looking at this majestic existence, Lin Feng felt like he was suffocating. He was proficient in the power of fire and had a deep understanding of fire. However, whether it was the fire of devouring or the fire of rebirth, they were so insignificant in front of this flaming mountain. They were not on the same level at all. Including the huge volcanoes he had passed by earlier, even if all of them were added together, compared to this flaming mountain, it was a world of difference. So powerful. What kind of firepower is this? Looking at the flaming mountain in front of him, Lin Feng felt as if his heart had stopped beating. There was a special, isolated space here that completely sealed off the power of this majestic flaming mountain. That was why he could not sense it at all. But Hong Ling could sense it. There was no need to ask. He knew that this was the ultimate power Hong Ling sensed. It was too shocking and terrifying. Lin Feng was stunned for more than 10 seconds before he came back to his senses. Instantly, he smiled bitterly. Could the treasure be hidden in this flaming mountain? Looking at the flaming mountain with such a terrifying aura, Lin Feng felt his scalp go numb. If the treasure was hidden in the flaming mountain, how could he get it? Just getting close to it was already a big problem. Once he entered, the terrifying flames would be enough to burn his soul to ashes. His defense, even the fire of rebirth that had comprehended the path of saints, was too weak in front of such a terrifying power. No matter how strong the clone's physical defense was, it could not withstand this power that surpassed the saint level. At this moment, the wind and clouds suddenly changed. Boom! A deafening explosion suddenly sounded. As if tens of thousands of fire dragons were roaring furiously at the same time, the entire space shook violently. The surrounding fire elements instantly became chaotic. Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. Before he could react, the flaming mountain in front of him changed once again. Thunderous rumbles resounded continuously. Every time it shook, it seemed to be the most direct beating in the depths of his heart. Horror filled his heart. This vision, it was too clear, too familiar. A bitter smile appeared on Lin Feng's face. She had already experienced this 6 times since she entered this place. Volcano eruption. The difference was that the previous volcanic eruptions were a large group of volcanoes, wave after wave. By the 6th volcanic eruption, thousands of volcanoes had erupted, and it was a spectacular sight. As for the 7th eruption, it would appear that it was merely the eruption of a single volcano. However, this one volcano was probably more terrifying than the eruption of thousands or even tens of thousands of volcanoes. Even during the 6th volcanic eruption, with hundreds of volcanoes spewing flames at the same time, there were only a few volcanoes that he was close to. The further away he was, the more the flame energy would be consumed. Even if they gathered together, they would not be able to cause any harm to him. However, this volcano was completely different. The power was completely concentrated. Chi, chi, chi. At this moment, the sea of fire was already boiling. The prelude to the volcanic eruption was longer than before. There was not the slightest gap in this space. If he had stayed at the foot of the mountain like before, he would have been swallowed by this sea of fire. The entire space was shrouded in flames, as if doomsday had arrived. The 7th volcanic eruption. Pursing his lips tightly, Lin Feng's expression changed continuously. This power was probably beyond what he could handle. If he tried to be brave, it would not do him any good. Furthermore, an unknown treasure was not worth taking such a huge risk for. Furthermore, even if he could avoid the 7th volcanic eruption, would he be able to obtain the treasure in this blazing mountain? It was harder than ascending to the heavens. In fact, he didn't even know where that unknown treasure was. Let's go. Lin Feng instantly made a decision without hesitation. If it was necessary to break off, there was nothing to be reluctant about. If he could not obtain the treasure, it meant that fate had not arrived. There was no need to force it. However, Master, the treasure is in this blazing mountain. Are you not going to take it? Hong Ling's voice slowly sounded, with a hint of inquiry. Oh, Lin Feng, who was about to leave, was suddenly startled. Hong Ling, how did you know? I can clearly sense anything related to fire energy. Hong Ling's voice was calm as he said slowly, The powerful energy that I mentioned earlier was this. Great shock. Lin Feng suddenly smiled. He did not expect Hong Ling to have such an ability. It was something that he had never noticed before. Just now, he thought that the energy that Hong Ling sensed was this blazing mountain. He did not expect that it was the treasure in the blazing mountain. After hesitating slightly, Lin Feng rejected it. Even if he knew that the treasure was in the blazing mountain, so what? Did he have the ability to obtain it? Let's go, Hong Ling. We can't even get close to this blazing mountain, let alone enter it. Lin Feng said softly. Although he felt that it was a pity, there was nothing to be reluctant about. In comparison, safety was more important. There was no need to risk everything for material things. Even if Hong Ling had become a saint and her control and endurance of flames had greatly increased, it was useless. She could indeed absorb flames, and she could absorb them endlessly. However, this was based on a foundation, and that was that the amount of flame she absorbed could not exceed Hong Ling's endurance. Otherwise, her body would burst. All right, without any objections, Hong Ling agreed. Although her original body was that of a battle snake, Lin Feng could totally imagine that cold and beautiful face, expressionless. He could not help but lightly shake his head. In his opinion, having no emotions should be a very painful thing. However, perhaps this was the characteristic of a battle snake. Whoosh! Hong Ling quickly retreated. She did not hesitate at all towards Lin Feng's order. She did her best to complete it. In this space where the fire elements had completely exploded, Hong Ling moved with ease. Shuttling through it was completely effortless. And the instant Hong Ling left, the blazing mountain range shook violently, completely erupting. Rumble, rumble. Extreme flames spewed out. The violent energy spilled out crazily. The sky seemed to be burning. Following the eruption of flames, even the sea of fire on the ground boiled. They were like piranhas scurrying around, attacking any life that existed in this space. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of explosions kept ringing in his ears. However, at this moment, Lin Feng had already escaped. The terrifying flames shot out like a meteor shower, but Hong Ling was able to dodge them. There was enough safe distance. That was close, Lin Feng said softly. Looking back at the raging, blazing mountain, the explosive energy was enough to destroy the heavens and the earth. If he was inside, he would probably be in an extremely dangerous situation. Even though he was so far away, he could feel the boiling aura of the blazing mountain. The continuous explosions and the energy that filled the entire space clearly entered his heart. However, Lin Feng frowned and his eyes lit up. Stop! Calling out to Hong Ling, Lin Feng's expression became serious. Hong Ling, who had received the order, swung her tail and floated lightly in the air. Facing the raging fire meteors, she casually moved her body and easily dodged them. Do you feel it, Hong Ling? Lin Feng frowned slightly. The aura of the blazing mountain seems to have weakened. Its energy is dissipating. Hong Ling's voice sounded slowly. Although it was a short sentence, it instantly enlightened Lin Feng, and his eyes lit up. That's right. Why didn't I think of it? It was like a snake nest full of poisonous snakes. If one were to enter the snake nest, they would definitely be bitten by thousands of poisonous snakes and be entangled by tens of thousands of snakes. They would die without a burial place. However, now that all the poisonous snakes in the snake nest had come out and attacked crazily, instead, the snake's nest was empty. It was the same for the blazing mountain. Its aura was powerful and terrifying, but it was not its own energy because the blazing mountain itself was an inanimate object. Its power was built on the extremely powerful flames. Pursing his lips, Lin Feng's eyes lit up bit by bit. Should he take the gamble? Yes. He had given up previously because he was not confident. However, now that he had thought it through and all the links were activated one by one, he did not need to hesitate anymore. Perhaps it would be dangerous, but he would definitely be able to withstand these scattered attacks. Moreover, he had Hong Ling's help. It was worth a gamble. Let's go, Hong Ling. Let's go take a look and see what's hidden in the blazing mountain What treasure! A faint smile appeared on Lin Feng's face. His eyes were burning with confidence. This time, he had the confidence to succeed. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. As they sped forward, waves of flames erupted one after another, but Hong Ling dodged them calmly. Lin Feng was not in a hurry. He just paced back and forth at the edge of the blazing mountain. Although he had decided to check it out, he needed to plan how and when to do so. He could not rashly enter the blazing mountain. Entering when the blazing mountain was constantly erupting would be suicide. He had to find the right time. There must be a pattern to its eruption. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. The distance was just right. Not only could he check the blazing mountain carefully, but he could also allow Hong Ling to dodge completely without wasting any energy. Good steel should be used on the blade. Limited strength could not be used in this endless defense. A cup of tea. 15 minutes. 2 hours. Lin Feng watched patiently with bright eyes. It won't stop. The normal eruption has already ended. This blazing mountain has merged with the entire space, including this sea of fire. Lin Feng said softly. He was completely sure. Although the eruption of flames was scattered and attacked everywhere, whether it was the huge fireball or the fire meteor, even the fire energy that was consumed, they were all in this space. Then, all the fire energy merged into this sea of fire. And this sea of fire, I'm afraid it's connected to this blazing mountain. With the power of the array, the three are completely connected and, finally, forming a cycle. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. He understood clearly. Chapter 1126. Although he didn't know much about array formations after careful observation, he could discover many secrets based on the details of the environment and the changes in aura. In his state, his senses were abnormally sharp. There is a pattern to the eruption of flames. Since it's a cycle formed by the power of the array formation, this cycle must be fixed. Perhaps the cycle is very long, but no matter how long the cycle is, it will form a circle. It will be a process of repetitive operation, like a machine. Lin Feng pondered. All his doubts were completely dispelled at this moment. He was even more confident. 4 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours. Time passed bit by bit. However, Lin Feng wasn't anxious at all. He just patiently observed and recorded every detail of the eruption of the flaming mountain. Every little detail could be the most crucial point. Slip, slip. As nimble as a loach, the red ribbon's fire energy senses were abnormally sharp. It easily dodged the flame attacks one after another. Even the densest flame explosion, like a meteor shower, couldn't hurt it at all. Thank you. Lin Feng smiled. Without the red ribbon, he wouldn't have been able to wholeheartedly search for flaws. Moreover, blocking the eruption of flames would probably consume a lot of his strength. It would be more than 10 times more difficult to find the cycle and the pattern. He observed the eruption of flames over and over again. Every small cycle would have subtle differences. Perhaps they were very similar, but this wasn't what he wanted. What he wanted was a true big cycle. It covered the entire small cycle, the largest circle, a completely fixed and unchanging existence. A day passed. 2 days passed. After more than half of the third day, Lin Feng finally confirmed. The eruption of the flaming mountain has an indefinite duration, and the interval is even more indefinite. Based on the power of the eruption of flames, it forms a certain proportion of the effect and the interval between eruptions. These subtle changes are easy to confuse, creating the illusion that it's random. However, it really has a pattern. Lin Feng thought to himself. After observing for 2 full days, he only dared to make a certain guess after more than half of the third day had passed. In the entire cycle, every 2 hours was a small cycle. The differences between the small cycles were very small, but they were not fixed. The 12 small cycles formed a big cycle, which was a perfect circle. The circle of cycles was a completely fixed circle. Indeed, the eruption of the flames on the first and second day was completely different. However, it was a difference in the small cycle, not the big cycle. Every great cycle is actually the same. What's different is that every day, in every big cycle, the order of the small cycles is completely disrupted. The first cycle of the second day is exactly the same as the third cycle of the first day. The seventh cycle of the second day is exactly the same as the 10th cycle of the first day. The 12th cycle of the second day is exactly the same as the 5th cycle of the first day. However, no matter how it changes, the composition of the great circulation remains the same. Lin Feng nodded. It was as if there were 12 people in a space. Perhaps their positions and directions would change, but they were still the same 12 people. Fortunately, his eyes were able to remember everything. Only then did he understand. Otherwise, not to mention 2 days, even if he had 10 or 100 days, he might not be able to find the pattern. Now, 20 hours had passed on the third day. He was completely sure. Because these 20 hours, the 10 small cycles had appeared on the first and second day, and they were exactly the same. Clearly distinguishing, Lin Feng's eyes lit up slightly as he looked ahead. The 11th small cycle had begun. As expected, Lin Feng observed carefully, and the corners of his mouth curved. Regardless of the timing of the volcanic eruption or the time interval, it was the same as the 10th cycle of the first day and the 7th cycle of the second day. There was no need to continue watching. He knew very well what would happen next. The opportunity is here. Lin Feng nodded slowly. He closed his eyes slightly, and the scene in his mind kept replaying. All the details of the 11th small cycle were clear in his mind. It was like a movie that kept replaying, looking for a flaw. After a long time, nothing. Lin Feng frowned slightly. Even if he could find a pattern, he might not be able to find a good opportunity. However, this was not the end. There is still the 12th small cycle. Lin Feng closed his eyes again. Although the 12th small cycle had not yet begun, after eliminating the 11 small cycles that had already been opened, there was only one small cycle left. Where was the flaw? There must be. Lin Feng's expression was solemn, and he clenched his fist. He kept replaying and thinking. Time passed slowly, and sweat dripped from his forehead. But it seemed that he still could not find the perfect flaw that he could use 100% of the time. Whether it was the 11th or 12th small cycle, the timing of each eruption of the volcano was very subtle. Even if he found the flaw, the chances were very small, and he had to take a huge risk. However, this was not what he wanted. This was because this opportunity was too dangerous. A single mistake would cause eternal regret. Was there really no more? Lin Feng pursed his lips tightly. He felt that time kept passing, and the chances left for him were getting fewer and fewer. Wait. How could I forget this? Lin Feng's eyes suddenly lit up. There was a buffer period between the 11th and 12th small cycles. This was the best opportunity. Simulation. In his mind, he kept simulating the scene, simulating the possible scenarios. Lin Feng made full use of his time. The opportunity could only come once. Coincidentally, the end of the 11th small cycle and the beginning of the 12th small cycle formed an opportunity. If it was between other small cycles, there might not be such a buffer period. Opportunities did not come often, and at this time, the 11th small cycle was gradually coming to an end. Boom! The volcano erupted again with a loud bang. The crazy power formed a meteor shower, bombarding everything in all directions. It was deafening. It's coming. Lin Feng opened his eyes, which were shining brightly. This eruption was the last eruption of the 11th small cycle, and also the most powerful one. It was precisely because the eruption was too violent that the final cooldown period was especially long. Coincidentally, the first eruption of the 12th cycle was the most powerful one, so the cooldown period and cooldown period in the beginning was longer than the other minor cycles. The two outbursts were like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle being put together. Opportunities that were not opportunities were forcefully pieced together to create an excellent opportunity. The sharper the blade, the easier it was to break. Boom! Boom! The eruption of the volcano was abnormally intense. It felt like the sky was falling and the earth was splitting making people shrink back. But at this time, Lin Feng's eyes were bright. "Hong Ling, go!" Lin Feng shouted. Without any hesitation, the red ribbon shot out like a bolt of lightning. The previous dodging was nothing to her. This was the true explosion of her strength. Her perfect sense of fire allowed Hong Ling to walk through the sea of fire as if it was flat ground, quickly approaching the volcano. The power of fire was getting stronger and stronger. The temperature was also getting higher and higher, unusually scorching. "Pong! Pong!" Hong Ling shouted angrily, but the closer she got to the volcano, the harder it was to dodge. She had no choice but to resist the power of fire. This flame was beyond her strength, and she could not absorb it at all. She could only use the body of a saint to resist it. After breaking through to saint, her physique had improved greatly. She was already very strong, but now it was even more terrifying. But the further she went, the greater the pressure. Even with Hong Ling's strong physique, she felt powerless. And at this time, Lin Feng's breath was slowly condensing. Lightning flashed on his forehead, and his body changed. Doppelganger. The strength of his body was extremely abnormal. Although he was in human form, his physique was even stronger than Hong Ling's. "It's been hard on you," Hong Ling Lin Feng said softly. With a thought, he kept Hong Ling in his body. Like Wing, they were both contracted beasts. Hong Ling disappeared instantly. Lin Feng's breath suddenly exploded. He calculated the time in his heart. Like lightning, he attacked. Swoosh! Like an arrow, Lin Feng's speed was extremely fast. The purple crystal spear in his hand was dazzling. Facing the fireball, he did not dodge. He turned into lightning and pierced through. With a groan, Lin Feng frowned slightly. His chest was slightly injured, but this would not hinder him. The blazing mountain in front of him gradually dimmed. It was the end of the 11th small cycle. The eruption had calmed down. The speed and quantity of the flames had dropped to the bottom. Wah! Lin Feng instantly landed on top of the blazing mountain. Looking down, he could only see the dense flames. The energy in the blazing mountain was even more intense and terrifying. Once the blazing mountain erupted, he would have no way to escape. He would die without a burial place. But he was not afraid at all. The treasure is inside. Lin Feng's eyes shone. He had absolute confidence in his judgment. At this time, they had just entered the junction between the 11th and 12th small cycles. The eruption of flames was close to zero. Just like what he had simulated in his mind earlier, the timing was completely accurate, without the slightest bit off. 10 seconds. Lin Feng's eyes moved. At most 10 seconds. Only 10 seconds. Whoosh! Lin Feng swooped down. Even if he knew there was no danger, daring to rush down like this required a lot of courage. But Lin Feng did it. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Thump, thump, thump. The feeling of his heartbeat was extremely intense. Lin Feng's eyes shone. That was not because of his nervous heartbeat. He was extremely calm now. His heartbeat was rapid because at this moment he finally felt that powerful energy. It was the existence that Hong Ling said had ultimate energy. His eyes were deep. Rushing at full speed, Lin Feng could already see the resplendent pearl in the deepest part of the blazing mountain. It was lying there quietly. His heart was moved. He was filled with extreme excitement. That was it. Chapter 11:27. It was a pearl that couldn't be described with words. It lay there quietly, like the existence of the emperor that this volcano gave birth to. It was so ordinary and looked so ordinary, but not a single flame could get close to it. It was like a kind of deterrence, a powerful deterrent. Its existence seemed to make the entire flaming mountain seem small and insignificant. 8 seconds. 7 seconds. 6 seconds. I'm in time. Just in time. Lin Feng's eyes shone brightly. His body turned into a bolt of lightning, and at this moment he had already landed in the deepest part of the flaming mountain. If the volcano erupted at this moment, he would probably die 1,000 or 10,000 times. But there are no ifs. Everything was within his calculations. 10 seconds was enough for him to make a turn. It's mine. Lin Feng's lips curled into a faint smile. It was the pleasure of entering a tiger's den and obtaining a treasure, pulling chestnuts out of the fire. Pa! He grabbed the pearl. When it landed in his hand, there was an unusual feeling. The pearl didn't have the slightest resistance. Lin Feng was overjoyed. He firmly obtained this treasure with strange energy. His body turned quickly, and he was quite agile. Just as he was about to rush to the top of the flaming mountain, in an instant, boom, 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 the entire flaming mountain shook violently like an angry bull. The magma in the flaming mountain rolled and burned wildly. The intense heat covered the entire flaming mountain in an instant. The exit at the top of the flaming mountain, which could be seen when he looked up, was now rumble. Rumble. Clusters of fireballs rolled down with fiercely hot magma. In the blink of an eye, the situation had changed drastically. It was completely unexpected. How could this be? Lin Feng's expression changed greatly. No matter how fast his reaction was, he was still stunned at this moment. He didn't expect that the flaming mountain, which was supposed to awaken in 6 seconds, would wake up in advance for some reason. Moreover, it had completely skipped the buffer period and directly entered the prelude of the eruption period. He could even feel waves of heat crazily attacking from beneath his feet. He had completely blocked off his path of retreat. Even if he stood still, he would be drowned by the magma and smashed into ashes by the meteorite-like fireballs at the top. There was no way out. With a pale face, Lin Feng's eyes flickered rapidly. He absolutely could not sit and wait for death. There must be a way out. Lin Feng clenched his teeth. Even if there was a slim chance of survival, there would still be a chance. The more dangerous it was, the calmer one had to be. Losing one's rationality would only bury the last shred of hope that originally existed. My calculations are definitely not wrong. There will definitely be a gap of 10 seconds. But thousands of thoughts flashed through Lin Feng's mind. There must be something fishy going on. As for this demon, that's it. Lin Feng's eyes lit up as he finally reacted. He stared at the pearl that was still lying quietly in his hand. Just like how it was lying quietly in the mountain of flames, it looked so ordinary and so innocent. However, it was the culprit of all this. I understand. It should be something like the eye of the formation. It was like a stabilizing needle. It was precisely because of the existence of this pearl that the mountain of flames and the cycle existed. And now, whoever started the trouble should untie it. Since it's the cause of the trouble, it will definitely be able to solve it. Lin Feng thought to himself. He could not help but recall what he had seen just now. This pearl had sunk to the bottom of the mountain of flames. No matter how strong the flames were, they could not get close to it at all. If it had stayed there all the time, one could imagine how strong its fire resistance would be. It should be noted that the bottom of the mountain of flames was where the magma gathered and the fire element was the most intense. However, it was safe and sound. Boom! Lin Feng's eyes lit up as he released his astral power. However, the pearl did not react at all. It was like a stone. Ha! He bit the tip of his tongue and blood dripped down. The pearl still did not move at all. It did not care about him at all. Lin Feng's face turned pale. He was almost desperate. The magma that was crazily attacking him was enough to destroy his defense, and the fireball above his head was already rumbling. It's over. Lin Feng's heart was cold. However, at this moment, something unexpected happened. Bang! Bang! The fireball falling from the sky, when it was about to engulf him, inexplicably made a turn and fell beside him. Not only one, but 2 and 3 fireballs did the same thing. There seemed to be a natural layer of protection above his head. What? Lin Feng's eyes widened. Before he could react, he felt a sharp pain in his legs. The violent magma had begun to corrode his legs. At this moment, he had no other thoughts. He shot out like an arrow, as if it was a conditioned reflex. Swoosh! An arrow piercing through the air. Lin Feng gritted his teeth and flew straight to the top of the mountain of flames. Bang! 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 Wherever he passed, he destroyed everything. Nothing could stop him. Any fireball or magma that fell on his head could not touch his body at all. They were all bent like matchsticks. Lin Feng was shocked. He looked at the innocent pearl in his hand. At this moment, he had completely understood. Swoosh! Lin Feng shot out of the mountain of flames. His legs felt as if they were on fire. The sharp pain attacked his heart. This flame had a strong burning effect. But no matter what, he was saved. Hong Ling. Lin Feng endured the pain and instantly called out, "Hua!" In the direction of his heart, a battle snake with beautiful red scales instantly appeared. Without any hesitation, it nimbly turned its tail and pulled itself into the snake. Like a swimming dragon, it swiftly moved forward in this region where the fire elements had already gone crazy. In an instant, rumble, rumble, the mountain of flames erupted. The flames that soared to the sky caused the entire sky to explode. It was a feeling of completely losing control. Without turning his head, Lin Feng could feel that the volcanic eruption this time was very different from before. But was it related to him? Without this fire-calming pearl, I'm afraid the cycle will no longer exist. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. The volcanic eruption from before was like a cycle. It was like a warrior practicing martial arts. It was unhurried and continuous. But now it was like a battle. It was an even crazier battle, erupting with all its power. Once the power was exhausted, the mountain of flames would no longer be able to continue. Pa! Lin Feng placed the pearl on his legs. Instantly, the fire spreading on his legs weakened, as if it was afraid. Under the interference of the fire-calming pearl, the fire instantly lost its effect and its power was extinguished. It really is the fire-calming pearl. Lin Feng smiled. Although his legs were numb and in pain, he was no longer in danger. The mountain of flames behind him was erupting violently. With Hong Ling's speed, he would be able to quickly escape from the danger zone. Although there were some accidents, overall this time, it was perfect. What a strange pearl. Lin Feng picked up the pearl. At this moment, he finally had the time to carefully observe it. The pearl was not big. Its color was also very ordinary. Just like his first impression, it was so calm that it should be called ordinary. Within the pearl, there was a crystal-like existence. However, it was not a sculpture, nor was it the pearl's core. It's like a teardrop. It's like water, as if it's alive. Lin Feng was also surprised by this inexplicable feeling. However, the feeling this crystal teardrop gave him was so familiar. That's right. When I found it just now, I also had this feeling. It's exactly the same as the familiarity I felt at the beginning of the Sparrow King prison. It's like a calling, but why is it so faint? Lin Feng frowned slightly. Suddenly, his eyes lit up and he clicked his tongue. Stupid. How could I forget that I'm currently in the form of a clone? Lin Feng couldn't help but shake his head, blaming himself for being foolish. The main body and the clone were two different existences. Their cultivation was different, their strength was different, and their comprehension was also different. Let's get out of danger first. When the time comes, it won't be too late to study it slowly. Lin Feng pondered. There was no hurry. Since he had already obtained it, there was no need to rush to study it. After a short rest, his numb legs had recovered. Although the burning and erosion of the flames were powerful, his clone was almost immortal. Perhaps it only had the strength of a sage now, but the foundation of the clone was that of a starry sky expert and could not be destroyed. Its recovery ability was naturally strong. As expected, Lin Feng looked at the flaming mountain, his eyes burning. Just as he had seen, the flaming mountain had completely lost control after losing the fire-calming pearl. The big cycle and the small cycle no longer existed. It was as if the entire array had been destroyed. He smiled faintly. It didn't matter to him. Under Hong Ling's lead, he had already entered the safe area. Looking into the distance, he could gradually see the shadows of the overlapping volcanoes. It's safe. Lin Feng heaved a sigh of relief. He could finally relax. This experience was quite unforgettable. He had almost died in this flaming mountain. Suddenly, just now, I seemed to have missed something. Lin Feng was startled. A doubtful light flashed in his eyes. Right, it's that layer of void protective space wall. When I came out, it was gone. Lin Feng immediately reacted. His eyes sparkled. He was greatly shocked. He remembered very clearly that when he entered the flaming mountain, it was as if he had entered a unique area. After careful study, he found that although the flaming mountain looked similar to the other volcanoes, it was completely different, because it formed a system, a complete cycle. But now the cycle of the system had disappeared. Fire calming pearl, the cycle that disappeared in this semi-independent space that hasn't changed. Lin Feng frowned slightly and pondered. Slowly, his eyes lit up and his breathing quickened. Could it be? Lin Feng was extremely shocked. He remembered what Qian Lianhuang had said before. At that time, he didn't pay much attention to it. But now, all the signs pointed to the fact that the flaming mountain he had just entered was an array within an array. And Lin Feng looked at the ordinary pearl in his hand in shock. His heart was turbulent and could not calm down. If he guessed correctly, this fire-calming pearl was the entire Sparrow King prison that Qian Lianhuang had mentioned. The most precious existence. Chapter 1128. How precious was it? Lin Feng's eyes sparkled as he looked at this ordinary pearl. He found it hard to calm down. Even he himself was shocked by this conjecture. If this fire-calming pearl was really a treasure hidden in a formation within a formation, its value would be immeasurable. Those who were in the situation might not understand it, but outside, they could clearly see that the entire Sparrow King prison was like a pyramid with layers upon layers. At the bottom, and also the outermost layer, was the countless Sparrow prison. Above, that was the King's prison, and above that was the third layer where he and Thousand Love Empress were. Each layer contained another layer. If there really was a formation within a formation, it would definitely exist in the third layer. Just like what he saw just now, it formed a structural cycle, and this fire-calming pearl in his hand was at the top of this pyramid. Huff! Lin Feng exhaled lightly and calmed down. This was just his conjecture, and the specifics were still up for debate. However, now was not the time to be obsessed with what this fire-calming pearl was. His gaze fell on the flaming mountain in the distance that was still erupting. At this moment, with the disappearance of the spatial barrier, fireballs and magma spilled thousands of miles away, and even the fire element was running wildly. The entire circulation system had been destroyed and no longer existed. In other words, this flaming mountain would run out of energy sooner or later. I've already obtained a fire-calming pearl. This flaming mountain has nothing but flames. There are no more secrets, so there's no need to waste time waiting. Let's go take a look at other places. Lin Feng said softly. Although the structural cycle of this flaming mountain had been broken, the entire semi-independent space had not changed. And this confirmed his conjecture. Whoosh, whoosh, like flowing clouds and flowing water, lightning flashed. Lin Feng sat leisurely on Hong Ling's beautiful and sturdy red scales, carefully observing the fire-calming pearl. He was very careful. Lin Feng could be said to be the only mount that had the strength of a saint in the human world. The contract of a magical beast was limited by its ability, and it was useless for a saint-level magical beast. However, Hong Ling wasn't an ordinary magical beast. He was a type of war snake. Within the Thousand Snake Cave, war snakes were extremely special. A teacher and a friend, a rider and a controller. Between the war snakes and war snake envoys, there was an inseparable relationship. The continuation of the war snake race was a clear vein of the Ophiuchus constellation. Moreover, Lin Feng had a different meaning to Hong Ling. They were like family to him. Hong Ling could be said to have been raised by Lin Feng single-handedly. Hong Ling had followed Lin Feng since it first had its own thoughts, and its strength slowly grew. Just like when it was still a child, Lin Feng's importance to Hong Ling was already deeply ingrained. In addition to the submissive nature of the war snake, when Hong Ling broke through to the saint stage and gained complete intelligence, the first sentence Hong Ling said was, this was how he addressed Lin Feng. The word master explained everything. This fire-calming pearl is really strange. It's not a connate treasure, and it doesn't have any aura of energy. Lin Feng thought hard and frowned. No matter how he looked at it, he could not discover the secret of the ordinary-looking fire-calming pearl. But it truly had power. The flames in the blazing mountain could not even get close to it, as though it was a high and mighty emperor. And to be able to safely stay at the bottom of the blazing mountain where the fire elements were so dense, it was enough to show the quality of the fire-calming pearl. But it did not have any energy reaction, as though it was dead, just like an ordinary or in a mine. Don't tell me I have to use it like that. Lin Feng picked up the fire-calming pearl, waved it around, and laughed bitterly. Indeed, if it truly had a strong suppressive effect on flames, then any fire element attacks would be useless against him. But the uncertainty was too big. In a battle, especially a life and death battle, he could not play with fire like that, right? After exploring this place, I will test it out with Qian Lian Huang. Lin Feng felt helpless. He had already studied it for an entire day, but he could not come up with a conclusion. After leaving the blazing mountain, the fire-calming pearl returned to its normal state and did not care about him at all. Maybe I'm still not strong enough. Lin Feng smiled. After keeping the fire-calming pearl, Lin Feng stood up and looked around. After wandering on Hongling's back for an entire day, he did not properly observe the entire environment, and in fact, he did not gain anything today. Volcano ground, still volcano ground. This semi-independent space was very monotonous, and there was not even a fly. It was like a place where birds did not lay eggs. Did you find anything, Hongling? Lin Feng suddenly asked. No, master. Hongling's answer was short and firm. Lin Feng nodded slightly. He did not doubt Hongling's judgment. Hongling was now a saint, and her perception was quite strong. In addition, she had a special sense of fire. If she could not detect anything, it would be difficult for him to do so. But was there really no other secret here? Lin Feng frowned deeply. He felt that after the eruption of the blazing mountain, this place seemed to be different. What was it? Lin Feng pondered for a moment, and his eyes suddenly lit up. That's right, the volcano erupted. I haven't seen a volcano eruption for an entire day. Looking around, the volcanoes here seemed to have suddenly fallen into a deep sleep, which was extremely abnormal. Since I entered, there have been 6 eruptions in a short period of time. The frequency is quite high. There's no reason for it to be silent for an entire day. Lin Feng was deep in thought. Obviously, this abnormality was most directly related to the destruction of the circulation structure of the blazing mountain by him. Other than that, there was no other reason. Could it be that my estimation was wrong? That blazing mountain is not a formation within a formation, but a special existence in a semi-independent space. So, this fire-calming pearl is the treasure here. He kept thinking and deducing. But Lin Feng's frown became deeper and deeper. It felt very wrong. The structure of the blazing mountain and the semi-independent space here were on 2 completely different levels. If he wanted to pull them together, it would undoubtedly be incompatible and too far-fetched. Between these 2 possibilities, he was more inclined towards the existence of a formation within a formation. Moreover, this blazing mountain was too difficult. He was practically gambling with his life. Not to mention how complicated it was to decipher the rules between the large and small circulation. If not for Hongling, he would not have been able to get close to it at all. If not for the fact that he had the complete memory of his eyes, it would be even more impossible to decipher the secret. Just entering was already a big problem. Even if he knew the rules, even if he knew the secret, so what? 10 seconds. Even with the terrifying strength and speed of his doppelganger, he still needed a full 6 seconds to fall from the top of the blazing mountain. What kind of concept was that? Not to mention ordinary star sector-level warriors. Even if his main body entered, it would be impossible to reach the deepest part of the blazing mountain and obtain the fire-calming pearl in just 10 seconds. If the difficulty of every mission was determined, the difficulty of obtaining the fire-calming pearl was not far beyond the ability of a star sector-level warrior, but far beyond the ability of a saint. There were a total of 12 semi-independent spaces that required 12 flaming feathers to enter. In theory, the difficulty was the same. Even if there was a difference, it would not be too far off. Qianlian Huang had entered once. Although the process was bumpy compared to the difficulty of the blazing mountain, it was like the difference between an ant and an elephant. There's no need to doubt it. Lin Feng's eyes burned. If the blazing mountain is a formation within a formation, then in other words, I still did not obtain anything in this semi-independent space. So, there are still secrets hidden here. Lin Feng's eyes were deep, as he was certain. Jumping out of the picture, the entire situation became clearer. Leaving the blazing mountain aside, there were 6 volcanic eruptions in a short period of time. But now they have stopped. There's a big problem. Other than volcanoes, there are still volcanoes in this semi-independent space. Even if the opportunities or treasures here are not directly related to the volcanoes, they will at least be closely related. Lin Feng's eyes were completely bright. After going around in a big circle, he was back to square one. Back to square one. The secret of this semi-independent space was within these volcanoes. Let's go. Hongling Lin Feng's eyes were bright. Where to? Hongling asked doubtfully. Explore these volcanoes one by one. Lin Feng's eyes were filled with determination as he smiled faintly. Make bold assumptions and carefully verify them. Instead of wasting time thinking, it was better to verify them truthfully. They entered the first volcano. Holding the fire-calming pearl, Lin Feng's expression was calm. Chi, chi, chi. In a volcano, flames kept rising and lava boiled and rolled everywhere. However, regardless of temperature or energy, it was a world of difference compared to the blazing mountain. These flames were easily absorbed by Hongling. In fact, Hongling was currently devouring the flames of these ordinary volcanoes as if they were food. With her current strength, these ordinary flames could only be used as food. Saint level and Star Sector level were 2 completely different levels. Pa! Pa! Within the volcano, lava stones fell. Before they could touch his clothes, they were burned by the rebirth flames. When the boiling lava landed on his body, Lin Feng casually raised the fire-calming pearl, and the lava instantly quieted down like an obedient baby. That's convenient. Lin Feng smiled faintly. He was now completely deep within the volcano. There was nothing to be afraid of. Even if the volcano erupted, he had the fire-calming pearl to protect himself. It was enough to protect his life. Moreover, he had Hongling. Even if the fire-calming pearl lost its effect, with Hongling's current strength, she could completely withstand the eruption of a volcano for a short period of time and allow him to escape safely. As long as the flame energy did not exceed Hongling's capacity, it would be useless no matter how much there was. Soon, Lin Feng had already landed at the bottom of the volcano. Nothing special. Lin Feng slowly nodded. After searching through the entire place, there was nothing worthy of his attention. However, this was also within his expectations. If he could find the secret of the first volcano, it would be too easy. Take it slow. I don't believe that you can hide it. Lin Feng smiled faintly. He was confident. Chapter 1129. The second one, the third one, the fourth one. Lin Feng patiently began his exploration journey. In fact, exploring a volcano didn't take much time. No matter how huge the volcano was, its interior wasn't that big. There might be obstacles outside the volcano, so the perception wasn't that clear. However, after entering the volcano, the perception of the entire area was clear. The exploration of the first volcano was the most time-consuming. After that, it was much simpler. If he really wanted to explore them one by one, it would take at least a few years. He couldn't afford it. Time slowly passed. Hour after hour, Lin Feng was still carefully exploring. From the moment he made the decision, he knew that it wouldn't be easy. It would definitely take a lot of time and effort. However, in order to find the secret and the truth, he had to do it. 10 days. If there's still no result in 10 days, then I'll leave. Lin Feng said softly. There were still many things waiting for him to do, and he couldn't keep searching endlessly. If he still couldn't find it in 10 days, it could only mean that he wasn't fated with the opportunity in this space. But at least, if he obtained this fire-calming pearl, this trip would not be in vain. The exploration of the first 3 days soon came to an end. There was no gain at all. The situation was not ideal. From the 4th day onwards, Lin Feng sped up his exploration. He no longer went to the deepest part of the volcano. Instead, he went to the center of the volcano and used his aura to explore. The efficiency increased by 30%. However, he still didn't find anything. This group of volcanoes seemed to be sleeping just like that. The changes were quite inexplicable. Another 3 days. Phew! Lin Feng let out a long breath. After 6 consecutive days of exploration, although he didn't use much physical strength, the feeling of not finding anything drained his fighting spirit. He had been doing the same thing numbly, and his mind was a little tired. He had explored tens of thousands of volcanoes, but they seemed to be carved from the same mold. There wasn't much difference. The structure of every volcano is exactly the same. Lin Feng frowned slightly. It wasn't a structure, but a feeling. He closed his eyes and jumped out of the circle. Leaving the flaming mountain, the volcanoes in the semi-independent space stood tall like stone sculptures. In fact, if these volcanoes didn't erupt, the entire space would be lifeless. It didn't look like a treasure trove at all. Instead, it looked like a formation. I've always been in the formation. Lin Feng chuckled. He found it interesting when he thought about it. However, even though he knew that there was something wrong with these volcanoes, he just couldn't find it. Too many. He had only found tens of thousands of volcanoes. There were still hundreds of thousands or even millions of volcanoes waiting for him. Although he had not calculated the number of volcanoes in the entire semi-independent space, according to the size of the volcanoes and the size of the space, there were at least tens of millions of volcanoes. It was simply unimaginable in the Douling world, but if it was driven by the power of the array within the array, it would not be a problem at all. No matter how much you think about it, it's useless. We can only leave the outcome to the will of the heavens. Lin Feng smiled faintly and relaxed. If I get it, it's my fortune. If I don't, it's my fate. There's still 4 days left. Let's continue. After a short rest, Lin Feng's eyes flashed, and he once again began his journey of exploration. It was not the end yet. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Lin Feng's figure was extremely ghostly as he traveled within the volcano. His doppelganger's strength was fully unleashed. In the last few hours of the 10 days, he tried his best to find the secret. With his eyes flashing, Lin Feng stopped at the bottom of the volcano and stood there slowly. The surrounding magma was still boiling hot, and the fire element was extremely rich. This was the last time he entered the deepest part of the volcano in the last 7 days of exploration. However, the result was exactly the same. It seems like we are really not fated to be together. Lin Feng sighed softly. It would be a lie to say that he did not feel regretful, because he did see hope and opportunity. However, time waits for no one. If he continued to search, he might not be able to find it even after 10 months. It's time to end it. The hesitation in Lin Feng's eyes instantly turned into a flash of light and disappeared. It was time for him to go back. Hongling Lin Feng turned his head. Hongling, who was not far away from him, was waiting for him calmly. Lin Feng could not help but ask, "Why aren't you absorbing the flames here?" It was quite strange. Every time he explored the volcano, Hongling would absorb a little of the flames as if he was eating snacks. Especially in the last 3 days, Hongling would greedily absorb the flames at the bottom of the volcano every time he entered the deepest part of the volcano. According to Hongling, the flames at the bottom of the volcano were the richest, the purest, and the best. In fact, the flames were the most concentrated and the energy was the strongest. However, this time, "I can't absorb the flames here," Hongling said slowly. He was suddenly stunned. Lin Feng looked at Hongling in confusion. What? In his senses, although the flames here were strong, With Hong Ling's strength, he should be able to absorb them easily. The flames here have some other energy, Hong Ling replied. Other energy? Lin Feng was stunned. Yes, the same energy as the pearl. Although it is very small, I can't digest it, Hong Ling said. The pearl's energy. Fire-calming pearl. Lin Feng reacted and suddenly remembered that he was able to find the fire-calming pearl because of Hong Ling's senses. The flames here had the energy of the fire-calming pearl. It was really strange. No matter how he looked at it, there was nothing special about this volcano. Hong Ling, are you talking about the energy of this fire-calming pearl? Lin Feng took out the fire-calming pearl. Yes, master. Hong Ling looked over and did not hesitate. There was indeed energy. It was just that he could not sense it. Lin Feng's eyes flashed, and he was sure again. The red ribbon's perception of the fire energy was better than his. She could sense it, so it couldn't be fake. However, what was the energy of this fire-calming pearl? Why did the flames here have the same energy? He was full of doubts. However, there was an answer to his doubts. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. After being depressed for a full 10 days, it seemed that a door was opening to him and light was emerging. Looking at Hong Ling, Lin Feng asked, "Only this volcano has this energy? Other volcanoes have it too," Hong Ling answered. Lin Feng frowned. "Weren't you absorbing it before? This energy is settling at the bottom of the volcano. The flames in other places do not have it," Hong Ling answered. "Also, only the volcanoes that we have explored in the past few hours have this energy. Settling at the bottom. In the past few hours?" Lin Feng pursed his lips lightly, his eyes sparkling. What was so special about the volcanoes that they had passed in the past few hours? Oh, no matter how he thought about it, there did not seem to be any difference. The same group of volcanoes, the same structure, and the same intensity of flames. The volcanoes that he had entered in the past few hours were almost exactly the same as the volcanoes that he had entered a few days ago. Maybe it's because I can't sense it. Lin Feng was deep in thought. Then, Hong Ling, can you sense all this energy? Looking at Hong Ling, Lin Feng's expression froze. Yes, master, Hong Ling answered without hesitation. Bring me there. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. Hong Ling could sense even the tiniest energy. Just like that time, Hong Ling could clearly point the way even though they were so far apart. This was a special ability to sense flames. Lin Feng stood on Hong Ling's back and determined the area where the energy was as she sped along. He frowned and looked around the area. It was not very big. With Hong Ling's speed, it took her less than 2 hours to complete the circle. However, there was still no sign of it. Is it in this area? Lin Feng asked with a frown. Yes, Hong Ling answered. After looking around again, Lin Feng paused and said, Is there any pattern to the spread of this energy? There was a slight silence for a few seconds. Yes, the energy in the center of the area is the densest, and the energy in the periphery is the most scattered, Hong Ling answered. Oh. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. He seemed to have understood something. Without hesitation, he said, Let's go. Bring me to the center of the area where the energy is the densest. There must be something wrong if there was an abnormality. If there was an energy of the same level as the fire-calming pearl, he would most likely get the answer. Yes, master. They sped in. Time passed slowly. Lin Feng's gaze was fixed in front of him. He was a little surprised. It was empty. The fire energy here seemed to be slightly denser than before. However, the volcanoes that were densely packed just now seemed to have suddenly disappeared. There was a faint familiar feeling in his heart, but he could not put his finger on it. What was it? Lin Feng frowned. Suddenly, Hong Ling slowed down. Wait, it can't be. Lin Feng opened his mouth slightly, his pupils dilating. This is the area with the densest energy? Lin Feng was shocked as he looked ahead. At this time, Hong Ling had already stopped. In front of him was an incomparably huge volcano. It was much bigger than the other volcanoes, but it was lifeless. There was no sense of life. He could not be more familiar with everything he saw. It can't be, right? Lin Feng did not know whether to laugh or cry. After going around in such a big circle, he was back again? Wasn't this where the flaming mountain was? It's here, master, Hong Ling said softly. With this as the center point, the energy will spread out. The further it goes, the weaker the energy will be. Lin Feng looked at Hong Ling, his eyes flashing slightly. This strange energy you mentioned could be the fire energy that originally existed in this flaming mountain? Yes, Hong Ling replied. The fire energy in this flaming mountain is exactly the same as the fire energy in the pearl. Bang! Lin Feng's head exploded. His heart shook violently. In an instant, all his questions were answered. Yes, this fire-calming pearl was born in the flaming mountain and was obtained from the bottom of the flaming mountain. It naturally had the same fire energy as the flaming mountain. Previously, when he took the fire-calming pearl, the flaming mountain erupted. Without the circulation of the array and the protection of the space, the magma and fire elements here naturally spread out and entered the other volcanoes. Therefore, the fire energy gradually decreased. I understand. Lin Feng's heart trembled as his eyes lit up. Chapter 11:30. Destruction. Destruction of balance. Due to the eruption of the flaming mountain, the energy of the flames spread in all directions, completely destroying the original balance of the semi-independent space. It was like a sophisticated machine that could operate stably and circulate normally. However, as some metal impurities entered, the machine became paralyzed, especially this semi-independent space. Originally, in his hypothesis, it was an existence of a formation. What was a formation? It had a fixed structure and was more rigorous than a machine. This flame energy was far more powerful than ordinary volcanoes. It was enough to completely destroy the entire formation. Therefore, he could no longer discover the secret of this place. Lin Feng chuckled. The doubts in his heart instantly disappeared like a cloud dispersing. Hong Ling was naturally unable to absorb it. It did not matter how much she absorbed, but the quality of the flames had to be within her capacity. The energy of the flaming mountain was extremely powerful. Even if it was just a tiny bit, it still contained powerful energy. It did not matter to him, but to Hong Ling, it was impossible to digest. It was like a glutton. It did not matter how much food she ate, but could she eat metals and ores? The puzzle was finally solved. Phew! Lin Feng heaved a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. However, a new problem appeared. How should he deal with the energy of the flaming mountain? Obviously, the formation of this semi-independent space was not destroyed. He only needed to remove the energy of the flames. When the time came, the opportunity would appear. Let's try. Lin Feng's eyes shone. At the bottom of the volcano, Hong Ling, is the energy of the flaming mountain only at the bottom? Lin Feng asked. This was very important to confirm. If the energy of the flaming mountain was everywhere, he would be powerless even if he wanted to. Yes, master, Hong Ling said. It can only be found at the bottom of these volcanoes. It seeped into the original flames and merged with them. Lin Feng nodded. Although he did not understand how the formation of this space worked, it was obvious that the energy of the flaming mountain that had seeped into the ground had now settled in the depths of these ordinary volcanoes. The process was not important. It was enough to know the result. His current mission was to remove the energy of the flaming mountain. There was only one way: devouring fire. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. Driven by the path of saints, the devouring fire appeared in his hands. The extremely dense flames were filled with a powerful, devouring power. However, it was completely different from the devouring power of the red ribbon. No matter how strong the energy of the flaming mountain was, his engulfing fire would be able to devour it. The only difference was the amount of time it would take. Bang! Bang! The flames burned brightly as the devouring fire unleashed its power, instantly absorbing the magma at the bottom of the volcano. 10 seconds, 100 seconds, 1,000 seconds. Time continued to pass. What a powerful energy. Lin Feng was greatly shaken. Although he couldn't sense it himself, he could clearly sense it as he absorbed and refined it. It was a powerful energy. Even if it was just a tiny bit, it was more than 100 times harder to devour than all the other fire energies combined. It was like a hard bone. No wonder Hong Ling couldn't absorb it, said Lin Feng. This energy was too strong. 1 hour later, whoosh, the flames disappeared. The devouring fire seemed to be slightly happy. It was indeed a full meal. However, Lin Feng didn't have any happy expression on his face. Instead, it was replaced by a deep solemnity. His bright eyes stared at the empty magma at the bottom of the volcano. His heart sank to the bottom. A full hour passed. At first glance, it didn't seem like a long time. He could completely absorb the energy and increase the power of the devouring fire. However, this was only one of the volcanoes. There should be nearly 10,000 volcanoes that have merged with the energy of the flaming mountain, right? Lin Feng shook his head helplessly. Perhaps this volcano was near the central area, so the energy of the flaming mountain was especially abundant. However, even if it didn't take an hour, even if it took an average of 15 minutes or 10 minutes, how long would it take for him to absorb and refine the energy of nearly 10,000 volcanoes? At least a few months. It might even take half a year. It was far beyond what he could bear. Shaking his head, Lin Feng sighed softly and frowned slightly. Was there any other way? If he had to use the devouring fire to absorb the energy, it would take a few months or even a year. He would rather not have this opportunity or treasure because the uncertainty was too great. It was fine to spend time, but it was meaningless to waste it on unnecessary results. What if he made a mistake? Even if he obtained a treasure, it might be like the strange parchment that Xian Lian Huang obtained. Or it might be something that he couldn't use. Wouldn't it be a waste of effort? If only you could absorb it. Lin Feng looked at Hong Ling and smiled helplessly. With Hong Ling's absorption speed, she could finish all the magma in a dozen seconds. However, she couldn't devour the energy of the flaming mountain. How could everything in this world be perfect? All right, I wonder if the fire calming pearl will help. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. He didn't know before, but according to Hong Ling, the energy of the fire calming pearl was exactly the same as the energy of the flaming mountain. Perhaps it would be useful? Then he entered another volcano. Lin Feng's eyes flashed as he took out the fire calming pearl. Huh! The heart's contract was incomparably familiar. That deep feeling came again. Lin Feng smiled faintly. Previously, when he was studying the fire calming pearl, he realized that the feeling of holding the pearl was different between his avatar and his actual body. His avatar only had a weak sense of familiarity. As for his main body, his heart was touched. But that was it. Other than that familiar feeling, there was no other use. That was why he kept it after studying it that day. But this time, bang, bang, bang. The feeling of heartbeat was incomparably familiar. Lin Feng's eyes widened. This kind of extreme sensitivity was something that he had never experienced before. At this moment, he seemed to have become one with the fire-calming pearl. There seemed to be a blurry figure in his mind, crying loudly. What was going on? Lin Feng was completely shocked. Before he could react, the fire-calming pearl had already bloomed. This, as if it had an endless attraction, the fire-calming pearl shone brightly. The flames of the magma, along with the energy of the flaming mountain, rushed over in the blink of an eye. Lin Feng was slightly stunned. Before he could react, the fire-calming pearl had already absorbed it quickly. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Pah! The light of the fire-calming pearl dimmed. However, Lin Feng was already looking at the scene in front of him. He was as shocked as a stone statue. It was empty. A large area of magma was instantly empty. It can't be. The corner of Lin Feng's mouth twitched slightly. He felt that it was hard to believe. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he really wouldn't have believed it. He needed to refine and devour for a full hour. Even Hong Ling needed more than 10 seconds to absorb the magma flames. The fire-calming pearl absorbed it all in less than 3 seconds. How shocking was that? Most importantly, it didn't change at all. Oh my God. Lin Feng came back to his senses and couldn't help but shake his head. It was too unbelievable. But I like it. In an instant, the shock on Lin Feng's face turned into a smile. He was incomparably happy. Although he didn't know what was going on with the fire-calming pearl, was it important right now? 3 seconds. Including the time to enter, it's an average of 6 seconds. With 10,000 volcanoes, I don't need 18 hours to completely clear the energy of the flaming mountain. Lin Feng's lips curled into a smile. All the difficulties were solved. There were no more obstacles. It was executed perfectly. Lin Feng stood on Hong Ling's back. The fire-calming pearl in his hand shone, maximizing its efficiency. After becoming a saint, Hong Ling's speed might not be as fast as the avatar's abnormal physique, but it was still faster than the main body. Moreover, only Hong Ling could sense the energy of the flaming mountain. It was naturally the best plan to have her lead the way. It could also save a lot of effort. Hiss! Hiss! The flames were rapidly absorbed. Lin Feng's eyes lit up slightly. It was a rather unique fire-calming pearl. He tried it again later. When the avatar used the fire-calming pearl, it would not absorb the flames. Instead, it would repel the flames like in the flaming mountain. But when the main body used the fire-calming pearl, not only would the connection be stronger, it could also easily absorb the flames. Obviously, this fire-calming pearl was more friendly to fire spirit masters. Wah! Wah! The flames continued to absorb. However, the fire-calming pearl did not change at all. Even if it absorbed so much flame energy, it still looked so ordinary. But this time, Lin Feng was very clear. He was very sure that this fire-calming pearl was definitely not an ordinary item, as expected of a treasure hidden in a formation within a formation. It possesses a huge secret, he thought. Lin Feng was secretly delighted. This time, he had indeed picked up a treasure. Although he didn't understand it now, it didn't matter if he couldn't use it. He would definitely be able to use it in the future. Just like when he first obtained the innate astral treasure, he didn't understand it either because his strength was too weak at that time. Now, this fire-calming pearl was the same. As his strength continued to increase in the future, there would be a day when it would shine. 6 hours, 10 hours, 14 hours. The last one, Lin Feng said softly, his eyes shining. He absorbed the volcanoes one by one, not leaving a single one behind. According to Hong Ling, there was only one volcano left. The energy of all the volcanoes had been completely absorbed, but it took much less time than the expected 18 hours. This was not only because there were less than 10,000 volcanoes, but also because the energy of the volcanoes became less and less the further one went into the region. Wah! In an instant, the magma at the bottom of the volcano was completely absorbed. Done. It was finally done. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. Following the absorption of the last flaming mountain's energy, the feeling this volcano gave him immediately changed. Although there were fluctuations of flames before, it was lifeless as if it was in a deep sleep. But now it was completely different. In an instant, the flames at the bottom of the volcano spat out fiercely. It's coming. Lin Feng was not alarmed but happy. His heart was extremely moved. He did not need to care about the spitting flames at all. The moment they touched him, they were absorbed by the fire-calming pearl. And at this moment, whoosh! Hong Ling broke through the air like a dragon. Wah! In an instant, he flew out of the mouth of the volcano. Lin Feng smiled faintly and looked around. He could clearly sense the vitality in the surroundings. The group of active volcanoes seemed to have recovered all their vitality in an instant. That feeling was incomparable. Come! Lin Feng's eyes shone brightly. He had waited for a long time. Chapter 1131. The seventh volcanic eruption. Extreme fire elemental energy spread through the air. Whoosh! Lin Feng instantly descended from the sky and landed on the ground. Even though he had the protection of the red silk and the fire-stabilizing pearl, there was no need for him to fear these ordinary flames. However, it was better to avoid unnecessary trouble. There was no need for him to put on a brave front. It seems different. Lin Feng's eyes shone brightly. Looking at his surroundings, it had been over 10 seconds since he came out of the volcano. However, the volcanic eruption had yet to begin. The previous 6 volcanic eruptions only lasted for an instant. However, this time, the volcanoes were still accumulating power. Lava was flowing out from the volcanoes, and the earth was trembling. Is it because the formation has just been restored? Lin Feng frowned slightly. No. Lin Feng immediately rejected that idea. The power of the blazing mountain only suppressed the eruption. It did not destroy the formation. Once the power of the blazing mountain disappeared, the formation would naturally resume its cycle. It would be too far-fetched to say that it was because of the blazing mountain. The greater possibility was this 7th volcanic eruption was very subtle. I only obtained it after putting in a lot of effort. The more you put in, the more you will obtain. Extreme misfortune brings bliss. Lin Feng smiled calmly. There was a hint of joy in his calm expression. He was not afraid at all. Opportunity and danger coexisted. The more dangerous it was, the more unusual it was. It proved that he was getting closer to the truth. Boom! Lightning flashed. After accumulating power for several thousand seconds, the first volcanic eruption occurred. A terrifying flame aura condensed in the air. It was far more powerful than the previous 6 eruptions. If one were to use spear techniques as an example, the previous 6 eruptions were won by speed. This time, it was won by strength. The pressure was overwhelming. The intensity of the flames was so dense that they seemed to have solidified. It was over 10 times stronger than the previous flames. Essence. It was a fundamental strengthening of the flames. How peculiar. Lin Feng's eyes shone. He knew very well that this was not some secret technique. It was most likely due to the formation. With the power of the formation as the center, if one were to say that the first 6 eruptions were a gradual process, then right now, it was the end, the final decisive battle. Even if the power of the previous 6 volcanic eruptions were multiplied by 10 times, it would still be far inferior. Rumble. Boom. 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 The sky and the earth trembled as if the end of the world had arrived. The roaring flames came from all directions, blooming like fireworks. The beautiful fiery red color made the surrounding scenery pale in comparison. Oh! Lin Feng's eyes lit up as he stood upright. It is indeed different. This time, they seem to have come prepared. Lin Feng said softly. His senses were very clear. The fire energy from before was a chaotic attack without any purpose. Even a most powerful volcanic eruption, the 6th volcanic eruption, where thousands of volcanoes erupted at the same time, could only cause limited damage to him. The further away, the weaker the attack. But this time, the fireballs covered the sky and covered the earth, and they seemed to be aimed at him. It was as if someone was controlling it, and it was quite accurate. Interesting formation. Lin Feng smiled. If it were him when he first entered this place, he would probably be flustered. With Hongling's strength back then, he might not be able to withstand the refined fire energy. But now, not only was it easy, but Hongling was also very excited. The stronger the fire energy, the stronger the purity and power, the more beneficial Hongling would be. Roar! The red silk covering the body of the battle snake shone with an intense light. In an instant, the body of the battle snake became much larger. The body of the battle snake condensed into a long body like that of a giant dragon. It quickly coiled up, and a fiery red light flashed in its eyes. How greedy! Lin Feng laughed. He felt as if he was living in a sealed room. Red scales wrapped around him, and no aura could leak out. Complete protection. Bang! 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 The sky fell and the earth cracked. The volcanoes erupted. They surged in from all directions with an unstoppable momentum, as if they were going to destroy everything in their path. Just as Lin Feng had expected, all the volcanic energy seemed to be transmitted, causing the power of fire to be condensed to the extreme. One volcano after another, one patch after another. In the end, it turned into a rain of fire, falling from all directions like a meteor shower. There was no blind spot. If it were any other martial artist, the first thing they would consider was go. This power had far exceeded the burden of a star sector level martial artist. Moreover, any martial artist with a brain could see that this was only the prelude. The volcanic eruption, this time, was completely different from the previous ones. All the power seemed to be exploding at once, going straight for the only target. Blocking was the stupidest thing to do. Blocking and defending in place was the stupidest of the stupidest. But Lin Feng had chosen such a stupid method. Hua! Brilliant light shone. Hong Ling let out a loud roar. He was not injured, but extremely excited. After advancing to the saint level, normal fire energy was almost useless to her. But this fire energy had surpassed the star sector level and reached the saint level. The first time the flames fell, the red silk absorbed them all cleanly and cleanly. There was only one word to describe it. Awesome. Extremely awesome. Boom. Boom. Flames rained down like meteors. Hong Ling's body flashed with a fiery red light, and she absorbed them continuously. At this moment, Lin Feng was also calm and unruffled. His lips curled into a faint smile, and he hid comfortably in the protection of Hong Ling's fiery red scales. He could not feel the slightest bit of fire energy. With Hong Ling's current strength, although the fire energy was strong, it was still within her absorption range. As long as the quality did not exceed, it did not matter how much quantity there was. However, this law was broken very quickly. Something's not right. Hong Ling's aura is a bit chaotic. Lin Feng, who was standing calmly, suddenly opened his eyes, and his heart skipped a beat. 15 minutes had passed. At this moment, the volcano's eruption had entered the most white-hot stage. Pursing his lips, Lin Feng closed his eyes again. Through Hong Ling, he could clearly sense the surroundings. It was as if there were pairs of eyes in the sky, and everything was in his eyes. Lin Feng was shocked. The scene now was very different from before. As if doomsday had arrived, the number of fiery meteors in the sky was unimaginable. Tens of thousands of them fell crazily. Almost every moment, hundreds of fire energy fell on Hong Ling's body, and all of them were extremely powerful. She could not absorb them in time. Hong Ling was full. It was not really full, but she was full in an instant. She could not absorb them in time. This is not Hong Ling's original fire. She needs to convert it to form her own power. If the fire energy was ordinary, the conversion would naturally be fast. But this fire energy is not only fine, but there are so many of them. No wonder. Lin Feng thought to himself. He completely understood. Hong Ling was also very stubborn. Even if she was injured, she was not willing to take a step back. But this was not a good thing. Hong Ling, give me a gap, Lin Feng said softly. As his voice fell, he did not pause at all. Almost in an instant, Hong Ling's body moved slightly, revealing a fiery red gap. It was the color of the fire. Whoosh! Lin Feng's eyes shone. He stepped lightly on Hong Ling's neck, and a light light bloomed in his hand. Fire calming pearl. Come. Lin Feng smiled slightly. After absorbing the energy of the flaming mountain, he had some understanding of the fire calming pearl. Its absorption power was indeed terrifying, and so was its absorption speed. The only flaw was that the absorption area was not large. For example, he could only protect the area above his head when he raised it. However, how could the world be perfect? This was enough for now. This. In an instant, the falling fireballs in the sky seemed to be attracted by a magnet. They entered the fire calming pearl and disappeared in the blink of an eye. If the fire calming pearl could absorb the powerful energy of the flaming mountain, how could these ordinary flames be absorbed? Even if these flames were 10 or 100 times finer, they could not compare to the energy of the flaming mountain. As for Hong Ling, the pressure on her lessened. Although Lin Feng absorbed most of the flames, there was still a small portion left for her. It was just right. As long as it was within her power, she could absorb and convert this amount of flames in an instant. Not only would it not hurt her, but it could also be converted into energy to strengthen her body and recover. Time passed slowly. With the addition of Lin Feng and the fire calming pearl, the situation was completely stabilized. In fact, even without Hong Ling's help, this stupid method could easily solve this crisis. No matter how powerful it was, there was still a world of difference between it and the flaming mountain, a formation within a formation. Most importantly, the fire calming pearl was too powerful. It seems like it's going to end soon. Lin Feng stood on Hong Ling's body and looked up slightly. His eyes were shining. The speed and efficiency of the falling flames had decreased by more than one level. From the beginning to the climax, and from the climax, it slowly decreased. Now, like the setting sun, the seventh volcanic eruption was finally over. Boom! Boom! The number of flaming meteors became fewer and fewer, and Lin Feng became more and more expectant. His intuition told him that the secret of this semi-independent space was about to be revealed. What would it be? Bang! The last flame turned into nothingness. The entire space seemed to have stopped at this moment. Lin Feng's eyes were as bright as stars. In an instant, pa, 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 the sound of changes was heard continuously. Lin Feng was slightly shocked. He looked around and saw that the incomparably huge volcanoes had exploded in an instant. They did not disappear. Instead, they turned into tiny light spots and flew above his head like fireflies. Oh! Lin Feng looked up curiously. A strange phenomenon that he had never seen before was slowly appearing in front of him. In the distance, the light spots from near to far, from slow to fast, gathered above his head, as if they were being absorbed by some kind of power. Little by little, the light spots were as dazzling as stars. They became brighter and brighter, causing his heart to tremble more and more. That is, Lin Feng's eyes were completely bright. Chapter 1132. A bright spot of light faintly resonated with the fire-stabilizing pearl in his hand. His heartbeat sped up. It was as if the heavenly Tao had descended. It was the key to the door in front of him. Everything else paled in comparison. The entire semi-independent space was empty. All the volcanoes, flames, and even the Tao of force and Tao of fire contained in the entire space had turned into this light spot, proudly floating above the entire space. Its existence was dazzling. At this moment, it seemed to have covered the radiance of the fire-stabilizing pearl. Whoosh! The bright spot of light slowly descended. It was as if a treasure had descended from the heavens and was floating in front of him. Lin Feng's eyes flashed with a strange luster. He stared at the bright spot of light. It was as if something was pulling him. He felt as if he could see through the bright spot of light and see through everything. This is the Tao of the Sparrow King. This phrase appeared in Lin Feng's mind. Even he was shocked. However, in an instant, I understand. Lin Feng's eyes brightened. The Tao of the Sparrow King might not exist in the spiritual energy. It might not be an invisible existence. Perhaps it's hiding here. With a thought, Lin Feng slowly stretched out his right hand. His movements were slow and gentle. However, it was accompanied by the sound of his heartbeat. He wanted to firmly grasp the bright spot of light in his hand. The feeling was very deep. At this moment, time seemed to have stopped. Slowly, he approached it. Chi! It was as if the light spot of nothingness had gathered. It did not have any substance. However, it was a tangible existence. Lin Feng's hand did not grab the bright spot of light. However, it was as if he had penetrated a layer of film. He triggered the password and opened the secret of the heavenly Tao. His body seemed to have become transparent. His entire body and his right hand formed a vein. It was as if he had entered a deep state. His heart moved. Whoosh! His eyes lit up completely. Lin Feng's eyes shone with radiance. What kind of power is this? He was completely shocked. Lin Feng felt that he was insignificant. It was as if he had entered a vast place. Everything around him disappeared. It was as if he was enveloped by light and covered by the power of heaven and earth. In the void, The blurry and hazy figure slowly lit up. The existence of Pang ran in the sky was like a bird, covered in fiery red feathers. The resounding chirp shocked the heart and lungs. The most striking thing was that pair of fiery red eyes, which seemed to be able to see through everything. They were filled with an extremely dense, killing intent. In an instant, Lin Feng was greatly shocked. The way of sparrow killing. The ultimate power of slaughter. The terror of annihilation. Wah! Her eyes shone brightly. As their eyes met, Lin Feng was completely sucked in. It was as if his consciousness had entered, as if he could see the ball of fire, the essence of the killing aura, and the great power it possessed. Tis! His eyes felt as if they were being burned by fire, but he didn't feel any pain. This majestic power did not harm him in the slightest. Instead, it was like a kind of light that lit him up. In an instant, the sky lit up with boundless colors, and a majestic aura burst out. It was as if a door had opened in the sky. His consciousness, soul, and even his eyes shone as if they were being baptized by this majestic power. Emptiness, silence. Tom stopped at this moment. But in an instant, the majestic power filled with a dense aura completely surrounded him. The power of heaven and earth. This is the feeling of breaking through, triggering the power of heaven and earth. Lin Feng murmured softly, feeling the rapid changes in his entire body. Wah! Wah! His body seemed to be immersed in the sunlight, growing rapidly, as if he was taking a bath. At this moment, the power of the Phoenix natal chart had been completely released, and his fully developed star cultivation experienced rapid fluctuations. Different Saint Tao breakthroughs would trigger different amounts of power of heaven and earth, and their strength would also be different. The stronger the peak of star sector level, the stronger the Saint Tao, and the stronger the power after breaking through, the more terrifying the strength would be. This was a direct relationship, and the power of heaven and earth that could be triggered after breaking through 70% of Saint Tao. This was the maximum limit. Boom! As if he had been enlightened, Lin Feng's eyes shone brightly. This was a type of Tao invasion, a type of bestowed power. Breaking through 70% of Saint Tao didn't only exist in legends, it was also recorded in real records, and it was an existence that possessed great mysteries. For any martial artist, once they broke through 70% of Saint Tao, their special muscles, bones, and eyes would completely transform. This was also the reason why Thousand Love Empress had been painstakingly searching and enduring. Breaking through 70% of Saint Tao could determine the upper limit of a martial artist. His body was trembling. His blood was flowing rapidly. Every inch of his skin, every bone, and even every cell, everything was undergoing the baptism and transformation of the power of heaven and earth. Among them, the biggest change and the most profound change was his eyes. They were enveloped by the power of heaven and earth, as if they had entered the halo of the giant sparrow's wings. It was not like the phoenix that was surrounded by raging flames. Its flames had already solidified and formed a true solid state, forming the feathers outside his body. Beautiful, yet powerful. Every part of his body seemed to contain power, possessing the existence of the strongest Tao. Comprehending all of this and integrating it into his body, Lin Feng let out a soft cry as the light gathered. It was as if he had returned to the time when he was just born. His vast star eyes and vast star eyes were immersed in a huge container, and the container wasn't filled with flames, but the profound Tao of heaven, bestowed and transformed. This is breaking through 70% of Saint Tao, the strongest power to become a saint, the most complete bestowment and transformation. Lin Feng muttered softly. All this while he had been unable to break through the bottleneck and barrier, but he had already broken through the moment he saw the giant sparrow. His vast star eyes and vast star eyes had advanced to the 7th level, and it was as if he had only taken a small step forward. It felt too easy, and now he was sprinting towards the 8th level. In the huge container, under the influence of the Tao of heaven, The power of his eyes was increasing rapidly every moment. Soon, they were full, but they were still not satisfied. Power, this is true power. Lin Feng could clearly feel the power of the giant sparrow, absorbing it greedily and crazily. But for him, the increase in power and strength wasn't the greatest gain. The real gain was often the existence that couldn't be seen. For example, the terrifying power of the giant sparrow. Unlike his master, Lei Meng, the giant sparrow's power was real, far beyond the saint and king sage level. His clone had already reached the saint level, so he was no stranger to the saint level. But what about after the saint level? After the king sage level, there were the legendary starry sky experts. So what? He had no idea. It was like a long and dark road with no end in sight. But now, the goal at the end appeared. That was it. The power of a true starry sky expert. So powerful. Lin Feng was like a newborn baby, comprehending everything. His heart was calm, and he was completely focused. Even if it was only for a moment, it would bring him great benefits. Whether it was his strength or his thoughts, they were slowly transforming. 3 days later, swoosh, a strong spatial fluctuation was generated. It was Thousand Love Emperor, who was sitting cross-legged in cultivation. She opened her eyes instantly. Her simple and elegant clothes made her look like an immortal. She slowly got up, looking at the spatial fluctuation with her bright eyes. A familiar figure slowly appeared. Lin Feng. A faint smile appeared on Thousand Love Emperor's indifferent face. "You're back." And, looking at the beautiful woman in front of him, Lin Feng also chuckled. Their eyes met, and there was a sense of familiarity and warmth, without the slightest awkwardness. They had shared the same experience and had helped each other in times of need. They had long become friends through life and death. "Your eyes." Thousand Love Emperor's beautiful eyes lit up, and she was quite surprised. Lin Feng smiled faintly and didn't say anything. Thousand Love Emperor's surprised expression instantly changed. She smiled and said, "Congratulations. It seems that my luck is really good." Lin Feng smiled slightly. "Not necessarily." Thousand Love Empress blinked her eyes playfully, hinting at something. "Oh." Lin Feng looked at the beautiful woman in front of him. It seemed that Thousand Love Emperor's strength didn't change much. Obviously, her entry this time wasn't a change in her nature, but what did she get? Thousand Love Emperor smiled and said softly, "With you exploring the path for me, it will be much easier for me to obtain the path of Sparrow King next time. Isn't it because my luck is better?" Lin Feng couldn't help but smile when he heard her words. It was true. Although he had obtained the path of Sparrow King, the entire space had shattered. However, this was just the evolution of the array. Just like these volcanoes, they were actually just the evolution of energy. The existence of the path of Sparrow King had transformed them into trials and tribulations. With Thousand Love Emperor's second entry, everything would return to its original state. Of course, the array within the array would be excluded. Although the array was ever-changing, the structure of the array wouldn't change. Thousand Love Emperor wanted to obtain the path of Sparrow King. With his experience, it would be very easy for her. "By the way, I have something to ask you," Lin Feng suddenly said. Thousand Love Emperor's beautiful eyes flickered. "What is it?" Lin Feng nodded slightly. "It's about the array within the array." "Really?" Thousand Love Emperor covered her mouth in disbelief. Although she was experienced and knowledgeable, she was still completely shocked. Her beautiful face revealed a shocked expression. It was extremely cute. It took her a long time to react. She looked at Lin Feng as if she was looking at a monster. "So, this is indeed the array within the array." Lin Feng nodded thoughtfully. His eyes shone brightly. With Thousand Love Emperor's affirmation, all the doubts in his heart were cleared. It was exactly as he had guessed. The fire-calming pearl had a very shocking origin. According to Thousand Love Emperor, the array within the array could be said to be heaven-defying. "I thought my luck was good enough. I didn't expect." Thousand Love Emperor bit her lips and thought to herself. She looked at Lin Feng with a complicated gaze. However, Even if I enter the array within the array, I don't have the strength to obtain the treasure. She had an indescribable feeling in her heart. Since she was young, she had been a dragon among men. No one of her peers could be compared to her. But now, there was finally someone who was not inferior to her. Instead, he was better than her. How is it? Are you ready? Lin Feng looked at Thousand Love Emperor with a faint smile. Thousand Love Emperor was surprised. Enter to obtain the path of Sparrow King. Lin Feng said softly. There were 48 flame feathers left. It was just enough for Thousand Love Emperor to enter again. As for himself, he had already gained a lot this time. Any more would just be icing on the cake. It was meaningless. Nodding slightly, Thousand Love Emperor looked at Lin Feng. Her beautiful eyes shone. Thank you, Lin Feng. You're welcome. Lin Feng smiled. Boom. Once again, the light spot protected by the array was shattered. Lin Feng looked at Thousand Love Emperor and bid her farewell. As the light flashed, the entire space returned to silence. Phew! Letting out a sigh, Lin Feng smiled faintly. It was time for him to leave. Back to the Douling world. Chapter 1133. The Vermilion Bird territory was bustling with noise and excitement. Looking at the clear rankings on the Vermilion Bird Challenge competition, everyone was whispering to each other. Due to the news of the southern region, the selection of the new Saint Lord and the Commander competition had attracted everyone's attention. However, the Vermilion Bird Challenge competition was a grand event in the Vermilion Bird continent, so there were still many people paying attention to it. Could there be something wrong with the rankings? That's right, the points are too terrifying. It's simply unbelievable. It must be a mess. How can anyone have more than 100 million points? It's so weird. Even Qian Lian Huang, who is ranked second, is way behind. Sung Run, who is ranked third, is a saint. It can't be that exaggerated. Someone has already asked. I believe there will be a result soon. From the initial shock, everyone was now filled with doubt. Indeed, the rankings were too shocking. The points of the top three were far ahead. The third was the first person to become a saint, Sung Run, whose name had already shaken the entire Vermilion Bird continent. His points were 13 million, far ahead of Jin Ji in fourth place and Shi Jixin in fifth place. The second was Qian Lian Huang, who had always been at the top of the list, with 25 million points, which was also quite shocking. But the first-ranked Holy Lord's points exceeded 100 million. It was more than 3 times higher than Thousand Love Emperors and almost 10 times lower than Songren's. A few days ago, when Lin Feng's score suddenly jumped from nearly 10 million to 100 million, all the warriors who saw the score were so shocked that they couldn't say anything for a long time. Such a leap was far beyond their imagination. 100 million points. What did that mean? In the previous Vermilion Bird Challenge competitions, only the first-ranked Holy Lord had the possibility of breaking 10 million points. Normally, a few million points would be the limit. And this time, there were 3 people who had broken 10 million points. Sung Run, Thousand Love Emperor, and Lin Feng. In fact, Thousand Love Emperor's points had already broken the record of the Vermilion Bird Challenge competition. 25 million points exceeded the original record of 19.5 million. She was the first cultivator to break the record of 20 million points since Emperor Yao started the Vermilion Bird Challenge competition. And the original record holder was the current ruler of the Vermilion Bird continent, King Yin. But Lin Feng's points were too exaggerated. 100 million, not just 100 million, it was 118 million. Just a fraction was enough to push the current saint, Tseng Run, out of the rankings. Extra, extra. The conference has clarified the facts. Lin Feng's points are completely true. It's absolutely true. It was true. It was indeed true. The entire Vermilion Bird realm erupted into an uproar. Everyone stared blankly at the rankings board, unable to believe what they were hearing. Are you kidding me? The score of 118 million is actually real. Where did this score come from? No one knew. Even Lin Feng himself didn't know. At the top floor of the Vermilion Bird Pavilion, the most prosperous restaurant in the Vermilion Bird realm, a man with a cold expression sipped on his wine. A terrifying aura emanated from his body, and he was unruly and arrogant. From time to time, he would glance at the huge point ranking board. He could clearly see it through the window, so his location was extremely advantageous. That face was so familiar, and there was even a faint killing intent. It was Lam Tok Tea before he was disfigured. "My good disciple, how long do you plan to wait?" A dry laughter rang out. It came from an old man with a withered and ugly face. He held a wine cup in one hand and hugged a peerless beauty in the other. His hands moved up and down to pinch her perky breast from time to time. The peerless beauty blushed, but she had no choice but to bend her body and continuously refill the wine cup for the old man. "I'll wait until he comes out," Lam Tok Tea said calmly, but there was a strong killing intent in his voice. At this moment, he was no longer as ferocious and terrifying as when he was disfigured. His violent aura and state of mind seemed to have been smoothed out, but this Lam Tok Tea was even more terrifying. He was like a venomous snake, extremely patient, waiting for an opportunity to strike. This was Lam Tok Tea, the person who had plotted to poison his own brother and was willing to do anything to climb to the top. TSK, how stubborn. He's been waiting for an entire month and still refuses to give up. The ugly old man's eyes revealed a faint smile. His aura was completely absent, and he didn't seem to exist at all. However, he was an existence even more terrifying than Lam Tok Tea. Human Demon Holy Lord, a human expert who had participated in the Second War of the Liches and Demons. His name wasn't among the 12 Holy Lords, but that was on the surface. In the circle of saints, there was no one who didn't know about the Human Demon Holy Lord. Because he had betrayed the human race back then, he wasn't recognized. However, all the saints knew about the Human Demon Holy Lord in private, the 13th Holy Lord of the human race. He was one of the 4 remaining Holy Lords of the human race. "I'm willing to suffer the most extreme pain in the world to break through to the saint realm, just for one thing in my heart." Lam Tok Tea looked at the Human Demon Holy Lord resolutely. "I must kill Lin Feng. Not only is he extremely cunning, but he also has talent that far surpasses mine. I can't give him any chance. Even if it's a waste of time, I'll continue waiting. This time, I won't give him any chance to live." Lam Tok Tea's eyes were filled with murderous intent. His voice was extremely cold. Waiting for him to come was a very stupid thing to do, but it was also a very smart thing to do. In a land of miracles. "I'm out." Lin Feng had a faint smile on his face. His smile was filled with satisfaction. He had benefited a lot from this trip. He had entered 2 ancient forbidden lands in such a short time. This was probably the first time in the history of the Vermilion Bird Challenge, especially the Sparrow King prison. It had completely changed him. The Earth Element Ancient Forbidden Land had completely filled his Phoenix natal chart. He had even gained the ability to transform into the Earth Element Divine Beast, Chiu Pai. Wing, Lian Shi, and the 100 Poison Rainbow Python were all cultivating in the Earth Element Ancient Forbidden Land. Compared to the Sparrow King prison, which was separated into several levels, the Earth Element Ancient Forbidden Land was more suitable for cultivation. Although he had to leave first, the 3 of them still had a lot of time to cultivate. There was no need to rush. Now that he had Hong Ling with him, he could replace them. "I'll go back to the clan first. Then, I'll go to the Yellow Crane continent to look for Qianqian." Lin Feng's eyes flashed. Now that he had become a saint, he had enough power to protect the people around him. Back then, Qianqian did not want to be a burden to him, and chose to return to the Qin Chamber of Commerce. She was so devoted to him. If he let her down, he would not be a man. Exhaling softly, Lin Feng's lips curled into a faint smile. He remembered that he had not seen Qianqian for many years. At that time, he had let Qianqian leave because he was not strong enough. His future was uncertain. It was one thing to not be able to protect Qianqian. The most important factor was her background. He was almost invincible back in the Yanling Prefecture. However, After entering the 9 states, there were too many people who were stronger than him. The Qin Chamber of Commerce was quite famous in the Yellow Crane state. There were many young talents who were more powerful than him. Was it possible for him to marry the daughter of the Qin Chamber of Commerce? What a joke. But now, wait for me, Qian. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. With his current identity and status, he was worthy of Qian. After dealing with these trivial personal matters, he could set off to the ancient Phoenix clan without any worries. That day, Feng Ming sacrificed his life to complete the mission. He had to repay this favor. No matter what, he had to make a trip back to the ancient Feng clan. He had to put an end to his father's matter. Also, according to Feng Ming, his biological mother, Jia Yezhu, was still alive. As long as he found her, everything would be clear. Perhaps entering the land of the ancient clans would be dangerous, especially since his identity was so sensitive. However, he had to take this trip. With my current strength, I don't fear anyone below the Saint King level. Even the Saint Kings of the Sorcerer tribe and the ancient clans can barely protect themselves. Regardless of whether it was for himself or Feng Ming, this trip was imperative. This was his responsibility as a man. At the entrance of the passageway, whoosh, it was a flash of light. Everyone looked over curiously, wondering who had come out. Usually, many cultivators would come out after the 1-year period ended. Most of them would come out after the 3-year period ended. Apart from these 2 periods, very few cultivators would come out during the other periods. On average, one would come out every few days. Sometimes, one might not even come out after more than 10 days. But this time, who could it be? Everyone's gazes converged as they watched curiously. A faint black figure slowly appeared in front of everyone, revealing its true appearance bit by bit. In an instant, whoosh, there was a huge uproar, and gas could be heard everywhere. Lin Feng. Look, it's Lin Feng. No way, why did Lin Feng come out so early? Compared to Tsung Run, Lin Feng was much more famous in the Vermilion Bird Realm. Lin Feng's reputation had already soared after the Weapon Refinement Conference, and the announcement of Vice President of the Union of Artificers had pushed Lin Feng's reputation to the peak. One had to realize that Weapon Refinement Masters were extremely renowned in the Do Spirit world. Even Vice President of the Union of Artificers had a very high status in the Vermilion Bird Realm, even higher than normal saints. It was indeed Lin Feng. Lin Feng walked out with a faint smile on his face. Lin Feng smiled as he looked at the sea of people. He had also thought of this result. It's quite lively here. Lin Feng pondered for a moment. He felt as if he had entered a sea of people. Dense auras filled his surroundings. After becoming a saint, he didn't need to deliberately use his senses. His body had already become one with this world, as if he was a part of it. He could clearly sense the auras of all existences. They were all Star Lords and Star Realm states. The most basic requirement to enter the Vermilion Bird Realm was to be a Star Lord. However, Saint level, Lin Feng was slightly taken aback. He didn't expect to sense a Saint-level existence here. He raised his head and looked in the direction he sensed. It was a luxurious restaurant, and there was a figure standing on the top floor. That pair of bright eyes were also staring at him, and their eyes met. He is... Lin Feng was slightly taken aback. He couldn't believe it. Lamb Talk Tea. Chapter 1134. He couldn't be any more familiar with that face. It was the deputy clan leader, Lamb Talk Tea, whom he had met when he had first entered the Lin clan. Not only had he returned to his original appearance, but he had broken through to the saint level. He seems to have come prepared, Lin Feng said confidently as he raised his head to look at Lamb Talk Tea. He wasn't afraid at all. Lamb Talk Tea was looking for him, but he was also looking for him. That day, he had disregarded their brotherhood and harmed his father, causing his family to be destroyed. After that, he had tried to kill him several times and hired an underground assassin organization. He wouldn't be able to eat or sleep in peace if he didn't get rid of this person, especially now that he had broken through to the saint level. The danger had greatly increased. Clearly, he wasn't the only one who had had a fortuitous encounter during this period. Good timing. Lin Feng said to himself. He had been worried about not being able to find him. As he gathered his strength, Lin Feng looked at Lam Tok Ti. Killing intent gradually emerged in his heart, but for some reason, he had a bad premonition. Warning, what's going on? Lin Feng's brows furrowed slightly, feeling somewhat confused. Although Lam Tok Ti was a saint, he had clearly just broken through. His aura wasn't very strong. With his current strength, he could defeat anyone below the Divine Master level, let alone Lam Tok Ti, who had just broken through to the saint level. There was no reason for him to be afraid of him. But if he wasn't afraid of him, who was he afraid of? Lin Feng was very confused, but he couldn't feel any other aura. However, the feeling of his heart racing was unusually strong. This wasn't the first time he had experienced this feeling. Although it was intuition, it was always accurate. Vermilion Bird Tower. At this moment, Lam Tok Ti wasn't the only one with a change in expression. The human demon Holy Lord, who was molesting a beautiful woman, reached out his shriveled claw from the woman's dress. He turned his head and looked thoughtfully at Lin Feng through the window. The faint smile on his face had long disappeared. It was replaced by a slightly serious expression. He is Lin Feng? The human demon Holy Lord wondered. His eyes rolled around, but he was also a little shocked. As far as he knew, Lin Feng had only been a star sector level. But now, he had become a saint. However, this was not important. There were strong and weak saints, and there was a clear distinction between them. The difference between a beginner saint and a saint at the pinnacle was like heaven and earth. But this Lin Feng in front of him seemed to have reached the saint level, but his strength was unfathomable. I say, disciple. Holy Lord Human Demon had just opened his mouth when whoosh, Lin Quan leapt out of the window, and her ghostly figure instantly disappeared. Frowning, the human demon Holy Lord couldn't help but stand up with some hesitation. He was very satisfied with this disciple of Lam Tok Ti's. His aptitude wasn't bad, and his temperament was very similar to his. He also knew about the deep hatred between him and Lin Feng. He didn't stop Lam Tok Ti from taking revenge. In fact, he even supported it. But that was based on the fact that Lam Tok Ti was stronger than Lin Feng. Now, that didn't seem to be the case. Lin Feng was clearly stronger than Lam Tok Ti. Could it be that you want me to take action personally? The human demon Holy Lord's aura suddenly changed. This sudden change frightened the beautiful woman beside him. Her face turned pale as if she was looking at a devil. However, in the blink of an eye, with a cracking sound, the neck of the peerless beauty was shattered, and she was dead. The human demon Holy Lord's eyes were cold. He moved his hands, his expression extremely unfriendly. This time, he had important matters to attend to in the southern region. He didn't want to expose his identity and cause unnecessary changes. To him, this was far more important than killing Lin Feng. But could he not help his disciple when he was in danger? How troublesome. The human demon Holy Lord ground his teeth. His eyes were cold. Strange, Lin Feng doesn't have a celestial body. MHM, and his aura is ordinary. He should still be in the cosmic domain state, right? But the assembly confirmed that Lin Feng's points are correct. 118 million is the real deal. There's nothing fake about it. How strange. How can his points be so high without breaking through to the saint level? Lin Feng's appearance caused a heated discussion. The symbol circulating in the Douling world was that a saint had a celestial body behind them. The so-called celestial body was the sign of a constellation. It was the symbol of one's natal constellation. When one reached the initial stage of the saint level, the celestial body would be indistinct. When one reached the intermediate stage of the saint level, the celestial body would gradually become blurry. When one reached the advanced stage of the saint level, the celestial body would no longer be indistinct. It would become slightly hazy, and one could barely see the outline. Above, that was the peak stage of the saint level. At that time, the celestial body would be in its embryonic form. When the celestial body was completely clear, it was the day one broke through and became a saint king. In a human world, It was the same as becoming a holy lord. When Tsung Ren came out of the passage, the celestial body behind him was indistinct. That was the sign of becoming a saint. But now there was nothing behind Lin Feng. It was no wonder everyone thought so. With their strength and experience, they didn't know that the celestial body would disappear after breaking through to the peak stage of the saint level and becoming a saint king. Instead, it would be replaced by the flashing celestial seal on the forehead. It was the mark of a constellation. At this moment, there was a real celestial seal on Lin Feng's forehead. However, this didn't mean that Lin Feng had become a saint king or holy lord. Whether it was the celestial body or the celestial seal, it was actually just a reflection of the sensing power of the natal constellation. For example, the king constellations were born with extremely strong sensing power, so their cultivation speed was extremely fast. Shizhishin, Ju Rumeng, Jinji, and even Star Lords and Star Sector level Star Lords already had a celestial seal on their foreheads. However, all of this was just an illusion. Only strength was the power of a true martial artist. Boom! Lin Feng's chi exploded. Lin Feng's indifferent expression instantly disappeared as his tyrannical chi exploded. The shocking power was like the descent of the heavenly Tao. The aura exploded from nothing in an instant. The calmness in the air disappeared, and all the heated discussion stopped. Tens of thousands of martial artists were blown away by this violent airflow. With Lin Feng as the center, a vacuum zone was formed. Lin Feng's expression was indifferent. A bright phoenix was flickering on his forehead, but he had a different kind of spirit. Lin Feng stood upright. Even though he was just standing there, he gave people a feeling that he was unreachable. The onlookers opened their mouths wide in shock and astonishment. Too terrifying. It was far beyond the star sector level power. Unimaginable power. Just the ripple of his aura alone could bounce everyone away. One must know how many peak star sector level powerhouses were here. Lin Feng's power, was there need to doubt it? Everyone, please move aside to avoid being implicated. Lin Feng spoke slowly. His voice was calm. He had purposely exploded his power just now to intimidate everyone. Instead of wasting his breath to persuade them to move aside, he might as well do it cleanly. In the air ahead, that familiar figure had already appeared, and a dense killing intent was gradually revealed. Unlike Lin Feng, Lam Tok Ti had a real celestial body flashing behind him, and, unlike Tsung Ren, who was faintly discernible, it could completely appear. Although it was a little blurry, it was the symbol of a mid-stage saint. Lam Tok Ti. Boom! The crowd instantly exploded. If Lin Feng's words were still confusing, then Lam Tok Ti's appearance was like a game of chess. Everything became clear. Instantly, everyone scattered like birds. Some ran away, while others hid. Even if they wanted to watch the show, they had to find a safe spot. Just as Lin Feng said, it would be unlucky to get involved. In a battle between saints, even the aftershock was enough to injure a peak star sector level powerhouse. And a Star Lord would be even more fatal. No one wanted to be killed for no reason. Perhaps killing was not allowed in the Vermilion Bird realm, but that was only for ordinary martial artists. To a saint, what were rules? Long time no see, Lin Feng. Lam Tok Ti smiled coldly and said slowly. To Lam Tok Ti, killing Lin Feng did not require any extra help. Too many people would be a hindrance. Even though Lin Feng was also a saint, he was still confident. Moreover, he knew very well that he had his master behind him. Looking at Lin Feng was like looking at a turtle in a jar. This time, where could he escape to? Yes, long time no see, Lin Feng said. He was also not in a hurry. Although he had to fight Lam Tok Ti eventually, he did not want to implicate the innocent. There were too many martial artists here. Even if they needed to evacuate, it would take time. Looking at Lam Tok Ti, Lin Feng's eyes flashed. He said slowly, I didn't expect you to break through to the saint level too. Lam Tok Ti sneered. There are many things you can't imagine. Is that so? Lin Feng's expression was calm as he said, including the matter of the White Shirt Association or the people of the ancient race. Lin Feng's eyes flashed as he stared at Lin Feng. You met the law enforcers of the ancient race? Law enforcer? Lin Feng was slightly stunned. It was a very unfamiliar word, but it made his heart flutter. The scarred man who had killed Feng Ming and destroyed his family instantly appeared in his mind. Although he had killed him, the dragon head ring he had left behind was like a keepsake. It was as if there was an even more powerful existence behind him, law enforcer. Ancient race law enforcer. Boom. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. One word was enough to make him think and understand many things. The blood feud and the repeated pursuit were not done by the ancient Feng clan, but by the ancient race law enforcer who used the dragon head ring as a keepsake. He had guessed wrongly all along. He's dead. Lin Feng looked at Lam Tok Ti. His eyes flashed, and he said calmly, I killed him. Lam Tok Ti frowned. With your strength, you can kill an ancient race law enforcer? Smiling coldly, Lin Feng's eyes sparkled with cold light. Lin Feng, you think you can scare me away with just a few words? Lin Feng, you've underestimated me. I've waited for you for a whole month. I've suffered so much just for. Today, I will kill you with my own hands. Lam Tok Ti clenched his teeth. His aura exploded instantly. The terrifying aura completely spread out, causing the warriors who were hiding in the dark to tremble in fear. However, Lin Feng's expression was calm. He smiled and did not try to defend himself. Boom! His aura exploded. Lin Feng clenched his fists. The light in his eyes gradually intensified. His new body was no longer the same as before. A great battle was about to break out. Chapter 1135. Right at this moment, whoosh! In the sky, a waterfall of light streaked across like a rainbow and appeared in a split second. The extremely dense water energy was like a clear stream that instantly diluted the originally extremely fierce, murderous aura. It was the human demon Holy Lord, who was standing on the top floor of the Vermilion Bird Pavilion with his fists clenched into claws. Confusion appeared in his eyes, and fear appeared on his face. In the air, Lin Feng and Lin Quandi, who were facing each other, had their expressions changed slightly. The aura of a saint, and it wasn't an ordinary saint. Frowning, Lam Tok Ti relaxed his clenched fists. He was still clenching his fists, but he hid his murderous aura. Although he wasn't afraid of causing trouble in the Vermilion Bird realm, or even killing Lin Feng, now wasn't the time. The aura of the newcomer wasn't any weaker than his. It was a type of deterrence, as if telling him that if he dared to make a move, he would be an enemy. With cold eyes, Lam Tok Ti raised his head and looked at the curtain of water. A beautiful figure gradually appeared. He glanced behind him, waiting for his master's response. As long as the human demon Holy Lord was willing to make a move, no one here could stop him. He could even slaughter the entire Vermilion Bird realm. It's her? Lin Feng was startled. He looked at the sky in disbelief. The beautiful figure seemed familiar, as if he had met her once before. It was as if she had walked out of a waterfall and crossed a rainbow staircase to heaven. It was a woman as pure as a lotus flower. She stood there calmly, as if she didn't belong to the mortal world. A pair of rippling, beautiful eyes, bright and sparkling, her beauty a little suffocating. It was the eldest senior sister of the Water Curtain Cave, Shui Yumei. Their eyes met. Shui Yumei looked at Lin Feng and didn't say anything. She only nodded slightly. Like a smooth stream of water, his figure flickered and landed right in front of Lin Feng, blocking him just in time. This is... Lin Feng was a little confused. He had only met her once in the 100 Waterfalls. She had received a message from her master, telling him that a catastrophe would befall in half a year. Although he didn't know her, from her words and actions, as well as her expression and makeup, he could tell that she wasn't an ordinary person. He definitely had a high position in the Water Curtain Cave. This point could be seen from their strength alone. Very strong. It had an unfathomable quality to it. However, what a strange power. Her strength seems to be due to some other factor. It feels very strange, as if it's not her own strength. The Doling world is indeed a place full of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Lin Feng was startled. He thought that he was already strong enough. At the very least, he could walk unhindered through anyone below the Holy Lord realm. But this white-clothed woman he met for the second time wasn't much weaker than him. And Lin Feng's gaze passed through Shui Yumei, but he didn't look at Lam Tok Ti. Instead, he looked at the nearby Vermilion Bird Pavilion. His intuition told him that there was a terrifying power there. Although it was like a flash in the pan, there was no trace of it, but his intuition couldn't be wrong. "Who are you?" Lam Tok Ti was the first to speak, breaking the silence. His eyes shone brightly. "Water Curtain Cave, Shui Yumei." A clear voice rang out as Shui Yumei's lips parted, her voice sounding like the sound of nature, causing the surrounding cultivators to feel their hearts skip a beat. Even Lin Feng's eyes widened slightly. "Shui Yumei," Lin Feng whispered, remembering this name. Just like Shui Linglong, her surname was Shui. He didn't know if it was the rules of the Water Curtain Cave, or what did it matter? "You are with him?" Lam Tok Ti's eyes were deep, his voice cold. Although there was extreme hatred and hostility, Lam Tok Ti suppressed it deep in his heart. To be able to control his emotions in such a short time, it was enough to show how scheming he was. Smiling indifferently, Shui Yumei didn't answer. Her beautiful eyes looked at the nearby Vermilion Bird Pavilion and nodded. Junior came on the orders of Master to bring a message. Shui Yumei's eyes flashed with a faint light, and she softly said, "1 foot, 1 zhong, the water of the Well River." 1 foot, 1 zhong, the water of the Well River? Everyone was confused when they heard this, and even Lin Kuei's brows were slightly furrowed. Lin Feng looked pensive. He looked at Shui Yumei and sighed. Shui Yumei doesn't seem to be here for Lam Tok Ti. From her tone and expression, besides Lam Tok Ti, there seems to be another hidden enemy. His heart trembling, Lin Feng pursed his lips. Very dangerous. His intuition couldn't be wrong. Moreover, Shui Yumei was looking at the top floor of the Vermilion Bird Pavilion. This person seemed to be on the same side as Lam Tok Ti and wanted to kill him. His strength was unfathomable. Even with his current perception, he couldn't sense the slightest bit of his aura. How valiant! Nonsense. Lam Tok Ti gritted his teeth, his voice sounding like it came from an ice cellar. Glancing around, Lam Tok Ti still didn't feel the slightest sign of his master making a move. If he let Lin Feng escape this time, he didn't know when he would be able to find him again. Now that Lin Feng had become a saint, the danger had sharply increased. Every day that passed meant more variables. Lam Tok Ti was well aware of this. Forget it, attack. Lam Tok Ti didn't care anymore. Even if his master didn't make a move, it didn't matter. If he could kill Lin Feng, then so be it. If he was in danger, he didn't believe that his master wouldn't lend him a helping hand. Boom! The aura exploded, and dense flames surged out. Lam Tok Ti's Phoenix constellation spread its wings and soared. The dense energy gave it a strong vitality. As for those eyes, they were as bright as starlight. They were abnormally terrifying. Lam Tok Ti's innate talent, vast star pupils. Oh, Lin Feng's expression changed slightly. He instantly clenched his fists, and his aura surged. Even though Shui Yumei had appeared, he was still in battle mode and didn't relax. Lam Tok Ti might be strong, but with his current strength, he didn't fear him at all. He wanted to kill him, but he also wanted to kill him. Blood for blood. But suddenly, bang! Inexplicably, an astonishing and terrifying aura descended, causing Lin Feng's complexion to change, while Lin Kuang's face showed a trace of joy. Only Shui Yumei remained indifferent, as if she wouldn't be moved even if the sky were to collapse. This power, Lin Feng was deeply shocked. At this moment, he finally knew where that dangerous premonition of his heartbeat had come from. Too terrifying. Could he block it? This question only lingered in his mind for half a second before it disappeared. Lin Feng was slightly startled. At the same time, Lam Tok T's joyful expression turned into astonishment, shock, and confusion. An incomparably complex emotion emerged, and his body trembled. What do you mean? Lin Feng's mind was in a mess. This huge power didn't attack him, but attacked Lam Tok T instead? Weren't they in the same group? With thousands of questions in his heart, Lin Feng was confused by the situation in front of him. At this moment, a pair of eyes looked at him. Lin Feng immediately raised his head and met Shui Yumei's eyes. The latter's figure suddenly flashed and appeared in front of him. "Let's go, we'll talk later," Shui Yumei said indifferently. Looking at the beautiful woman in front of him, Lin Feng glanced at Lin Kuo. His eyes flickered for a moment before he nodded to Shui Yumei. Okay. Although he felt it was a pity that he couldn't kill Lam Tok T with such a good opportunity, the current situation was too chaotic. Shui Yumei appeared with the order of the Tianji Elder, and behind Lam Tok T, there was a powerhouse who made his heart tremble. Yet, she didn't help Lam Tok T. It was chaos. In this situation, he couldn't act impulsively. Lin Feng's eyes were deep. Seeing Shui Yumei leave, he hesitated for a moment before following. In the void, Lam Tok T was completely bound. It was as if an invisible rope had tied him up. Lam Tok T's complexion was pale. He didn't expect that not only did his master not help him, he even stopped him. However, he didn't dare to say anything. Instead, under the watchful eyes of so many people, he became extremely embarrassed. Watching Lin Feng leave, unable to do anything, Lam Tok T wanted to roar. However, he could only suppress it in his heart. Damn it! Damn it! Lam Tok T screamed madly from the bottom of his heart. His eyes were ferocious. As Lin Feng and Shui Yumei left, not a trace of them could be seen. Whoosh! His body relaxed like a string, and the majestic pressure suddenly dissipated. Lam Tok T's expression returned to normal, but when he looked ahead, there was no trace of Lin Feng. With a muffled groan, his heart was extremely depressed. Lam Tok T's breathing became hurried, and his chest heaved up and down. Obviously, he was extremely unwilling. But what could he do? With his strength, he was far from being able to go against the human demon Holy Lord. On the other side, Lin Feng and Shui Yumei were like two lightning bolts tearing through the sky. Their speed was astonishing. Although the two had just entered the Saint Realm, they were the best of the best. Their strength far surpassed ordinary Saint Realm existences. Can you tell me now? Lin Feng looked at Shui Yumei, his eyes flashing. Shui Yumei didn't stop. She tilted her head and glanced at Lin Feng. Do you know how dangerous you were just now? Are you referring to the mysterious person hiding on the top floor of the Vermilion Bird Pavilion? Lin Feng slowly said. Yes. Shui Yumei's expression was dignified. She sighed helplessly. If he didn't care about anything, not to mention you, even I wouldn't be able to escape death this time. Although Master gave me strength, it's only enough to face a Saint Realm existence. It's useless in front of him. Pung! Lin Feng's head exploded. Although Shui Yumei didn't say it explicitly, the meaning between the lines was, that mysterious man is a Saint King Realm expert. Lin Feng turned pale with fright. Shui Yumei nodded gently. Moreover, he's not an ordinary Saint King existence. Even Master at her peak state is slightly inferior to him. Pung, pung, pung. With his heart beating violently, Lin Feng stared deeply at Shui Yumei. The latter's eyes were shining as she said softly, Lin Feng, have you heard of the human race's 13th Saint Lord, the human demon Holy Lord? Chapter 1136 Vermilion Bird Pavilion. The gloomy Lam Tok T returned to his seat without saying a word. He picked up the wine jug on the table and poured the wine with his trembling right hand, causing it to overflow. However, Lam Tok T didn't care at all. He picked up the wine cup and gulped it down. Pa! The wine cup instantly turned into nothingness. Lam Tok T's eyes revealed an ominous glint, but he clenched his fists and forcefully suppressed his anger. Although his heart was filled with resentment, he clearly knew what he should and shouldn't do. You're not his match. The human demon Holy Lord's expression was calm, but his voice was hoarse. Lam Tok T frowned and raised his head. Although I'm not as strong as that Shui Yu Mei, as long as Master could trap her and let me fight Lin Feng alone, I'll definitely be able to kill him. Looking at Lam Tok T, the human demon Holy Lord smiled. The him I'm talking about is Lin Feng, not Heaven's Secret's disciple, Shui Yu Mei. Lam Tok T was startled. It was as if a taut string had been loosened. His expression turned ugly. How is that possible? That little fellow is very powerful. Although he's a saint, he can completely restrain his aura. The human demon Holy Lord's eyes flashed. I remember that he was still at the Star Domain realm 2 years ago. I didn't expect him to progress so quickly in such a short time. He's indeed a scourge and must be eliminated. He didn't expect this at all. Lam Tok T's face was pale, but he didn't doubt the human demon Holy Lord's words. His master had no reason to lie to him about this. Since master also believes that Lin Feng is a great threat, then why? Lam Tok T raised his head and looked at the human demon Holy Lord in confusion. Suddenly, Shui Yu Mei's figure appeared in his mind, and the words she said. Lam Tok T's eyes lit up. This Lin Feng's background isn't simple. Heaven's Secrets thinks highly of him. Holy Lord Human Demon said in a low voice. Heavenly Secret? Lam Tok T muttered, looking at the human demon Holy Lord in shock. Teacher, are you talking about the Heavenly Secret Holy Lord? Who else could it be? Holy Lord Human Demon snorted in disdain. Of the 12 Holy Lords of the human race, 9 of them were imprisoned by the witch sovereign like zombies. Only Peach Blossom, Yun Chang, and Tianji are left. That bitch Peach Blossom is a solitary flower who never likes to meddle in other people's business. Besides, even if she had the guts of a bear and the heart of a leopard, she wouldn't dare to offend me. As for Yun Chang, he went crazy from practicing the spear and disappeared without a trace. Only this Tianji has always been against me. He felt indignant. It was clear that Rome wasn't built in a single day. Lam Tok T frowned. Teacher, didn't you say that the Heavenly Secret Holy Lord was heavily injured during the Second Great, Witch Demon War, and is no longer the same as before? Since he's such a hindrance, then why? Lam Tok T's eyes flashed with cold killing intent. Why don't you just kill him? Kill my ass. Holy Lord Human Demon gritted his teeth in anger. Those who can survive the Second Great, Witch Demon War, aren't good people. Especially that old bastard Tianji. Back then, he mobilized a monster race, and even a monster sovereign went out personally. But what was the result? Letting out a long sigh, Holy Lord Human Demon looked at Lam Tok T with a hint of fear in his eyes. You think I don't want to kill that old bastard? Let me tell you, 3 times. A total of 3 times. The first time, I was King tricked into an ancient array. It took me 100,000 years and a layer of skin to crawl out. The human demon Holy Lord angrily stretched out a finger. Then, he angrily stretched out a second finger. The second time was even more inexplicable. I was poisoned in a daze and slept for 200,000 years before waking up. And the third time, Holy Lord Human Demon's body trembled. His eyes were filled with fear. When I found him and was about to kill him, that mysterious cloud spear appeared out of nowhere. 3 spears. 3 spears, and I was heavily injured. It took me all my wealth to recover 90% of my strength. Lam Tok T was stunned. He didn't think that there would be such a grudge between the two. If that was the case, then this Heavenly Secret Holy Lord was too terrifying. Even a rotten ship has 3 nails. Disciple, remember, unless it's absolutely necessary, don't mess with Tianji. Holy Lord Human Demon let out a long sigh. If he wasn't afraid of heaven's wrath and didn't dare to use heavenly secret divination arts to kill, your master, I, would have died countless times. If I really annoyed him, he would break up with me. no one would have a good ending. Plus, your master came to the southern region for a big matter. This is such a great opportunity. I can't make any mistakes. Holy Lord, human demon's eyes flashed. He slowly said, 1 foot, 1 foot. Tianji's intentions are clear. If I advance 1 foot, he will return 1 foot. I will sell him this favor and let Lin Feng go. Then, we will mind our own business. He won't interfere with what I do in the future. So that's how it is. Lam Tokti nodded. But, are we going to let that bastard Lin Feng go? Lam Tokti's eyes were filled with ferocity. He was still unwilling. If you have the ability, go kill him yourself. Holy Lord Human Demon glanced at him and said indifferently, but don't blame me for not warning you. With your current strength, your chances of winning are less than 50%. His voice was calm, but it was like a sword piercing Lam Tokti's heart. Lam Tokti's expression became even more unsightly. Why is it like this? Lam Tokti gritted his teeth. His eyes were filled with hatred. His trembling body was filled with hatred. To Lam Tokti, this was the motivation that kept him moving forward. But now, it seemed to have become an unreachable wish. Could it be that he could only watch as Lin Feng became stronger and stronger, but he couldn't do anything about it? He was unwilling. Look at you. What have you become? Holy Lord Human Demon said coldly. Hatred has really blinded your mind. I've only allowed Lin Feng to live for a few more months. Not to mention that I won't have to worry about Heaven's will after the matter in the southern region is settled. Lin Feng might not be able to escape another calamity. Lam Tokti was startled. Master, what do you mean? Holy Lord Human Demon smiled coldly. Did you forget what Lin Feng said just now? Cleverness overreaches itself. I'm afraid he's digging his own grave this time. Holy Lord Human Demon's eyes flashed. The corners of his mouth rose slightly. Sometimes, you don't have to do it yourself to kill someone. All we need to do now is give him a gentle push, and he'll naturally fall off the cliff. He'll fall and shatter into pieces. Jia. On the other side, Lin Feng and Shui Yume sped away from the Vermilion Bird Realm. They returned to Shirluo County. With their speed, they quickly arrived at the Lin clan through the transportation array. Everyone was a guest, especially Shui Yume, who was sent by the heavenly secret Holy Lord. Lin Feng was indebted to her, and she was also Feng Ning's senior sister. Lin Feng naturally had to act as a host. After all, he was planning to return to the clan this time. After all, his foster father and Yuma were both in the clan. Now that he was a member of the Lin clan, he naturally had to do his best. The young clan leader is back. Quick. Go and inform the clan leader and elders that the young clan leader is back. What a joyous occasion. The clan was in an uproar. Lin Feng's return was like a bomb exploding, instantly igniting the clan's atmosphere. Faced with this situation, Lin Feng couldn't help but smile. Although he didn't know how he had become the young clan leader, he could guess. It seems like you're very popular here, Shui Yume said indifferently. Because I'm a part of this clan, Lin Feng said indifferently. There was a sense of belonging in his eyes. Ever since he found out about what had happened that day, he no longer hated the Lin clan, especially his foster father. In order to help his parents, he had damaged the clan's interests and strength. He would remember this kindness. Is that so? Shui Yume smiled faintly. I thought that you would look down on the human race, because you have the bloodline of the ancient race. How is that possible? Lin Feng burst into laughter. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I grew up in the human race, and my roots are deeply rooted. To me, the ancient race is a stranger. After a pause, Lin Feng's eyes lit up. Moreover, I've never cared about their bloodline. In his impression, the ancient race was even worse than the sorcerer race. Of course, that was before he found out that the ancient Feng clan wasn't his enemy. But now, the truth was still there. By the way, do you know the origin of the ancient race's enforcers? Lin Feng looked at Shui Yume. Shaking her head, Shui Yume's beautiful eyes sparkled. I don't have much experience. I grew up in the Water Curtain Cave. Aside from cultivation, I know nothing about the outside world. Looking at Lin Feng with her beautiful eyes, Shui Yumei said, and this time, I came to carry out my master's orders. I see. Lin Feng nodded. So, you've completed your mission? Shaking her head, Shui Yumei said, I can't be 100% sure. I can't guarantee that the human demon Holy Lord won't change his mind. My master told me to stay here for 3 days. As long as the human demon Holy Lord doesn't appear in 3 days, Lin Feng, your death tribulation will be over. Death tribulation. A bright light flashed across Lin Feng's eyes. Obviously, Shui Yumei. No, it should be the heavenly secret Holy Lord's orders. If the human demon Holy Lord made a move, he had no chance of winning. Smiling helplessly, Lin Feng didn't feel disappointed. After all, the human demon Holy Lord was the 13th Holy Lord. He was one of the few human powerhouses who survived the Second Great Witch Demon War. It was normal for him to be weaker than him. Right, according to what you said, the human demon Holy Lord should be a very reclusive person. Lin Feng hesitated and asked, how did he get involved with Lam Tok Ti? Logically speaking, with Lam Tok Ti's wealth, he shouldn't be able to invite the human demon Holy Lord. It's simple, Shui Yumei said indifferently. Lam Tok Ti is the human demon Holy Lord's disciple. What? Lin Feng's expression changed and his brows furrowed. Lam Tok Ti was actually accepted as a disciple by the infamous and terrifying human demon Holy Lord? If he wanted to kill him, wouldn't he have to go through the human demon Holy Lord first? No, even if he didn't kill him, he wouldn't rest until he was dead. This kind of hatred couldn't be erased. And because of his relationship with the human demon Holy Lord, it seems like I'll have another Holy King as my enemy. Lin Feng's eyes shone brightly. His heart trembled. He was in trouble. Chapter 1137. That useless Dian Ho couldn't even deal with a bastard. Yeah, as an intermediate Dian Ho, I feel ashamed for him. I heard that the law enforcer, Chi Tong, was reprimanded by the divine envoy because of this. 2 young men in strange clothes were chatting. They were wearing the same clothes and had the same appearance. Although they were not very strong and looked a little thin, their auras were quite strong. The most surprising thing was that both of them wore a strange ring on their thumbs. If Lin Feng saw it, he would be shocked, because it was exactly the same as the dragon head ring worn by Dian Ho. Law enforcers of the ancient clan. Among the 2 young men, the thinner one had the same aura as Dian Ho, and the flashing mark on his forehead was exactly the same as Dian Ho's. As for the other young man, his body was covered with lightning. He was slightly stronger and had an imposing appearance. Whether it was his aura or his speech, he seemed to be better than the young man covered in lightning. On his forehead, there was a mark like a roaring thunder dragon. At this moment, what are you talking about? A faint voice came from not far away with an intimidating aura. Lightning messenger. Brother. The 2 young men stood up and cupped their hands. The person who came was not very tall, but he had a domineering aura. It was the aura of someone who had been in a high position for a long time. His face was strong, his cheekbones were thin, his thin eyebrows were raised, and his buzz-cut hair was fluttering in the wind. On his forehead, there was the same mark as the young man with the thunder dragon, but it was brighter, deeper, and more attractive. Senior law enforcer, Lei Xiong. The 2 young men were intermediate law enforcers Lei Ba and Dian Long. Nothing, brother. Lei Ba smiled. We were just talking about Dian Ho. This guy is really useless. He can't even complete a small task, and you have to clean up his mess for him. It's true that Dian Ho died. Lei Xiong looked serious. The law enforcer and I talked about this task. Although there is no evidence, I'm afraid the ancient Feng clan is involved. The clan leader, Feng Chao, is very protective. Since Lin Feng is his grandson, it's not surprising that he protects him. Then what should we do? Lightning messenger. Dian Long frowned. Don't worry. I don't think the ancient Phoenix clan would dare to go against the Divine Hall openly. Lei Xiong said slowly, perhaps Feng Chao will send an expert to secretly protect Lin Feng, but he will definitely not invite a Saint King level existence. At that time, I'll hold that expert back, and the two of you can quickly kill Lin Feng. No problem, big brother. Lei Ba patted his chest and said boldly. All right. Jian Long also smiled and said confidently, no matter who it is, Lei Ba or I, we are both much stronger than Dian Ho. Killing a mere human is extremely easy. Lei Xiong nodded and said seriously, don't underestimate the enemy. Remember, complete the mission cleanly. Not only does the law enforcer attach great importance to this matter, but it has also attracted the attention of the Oracle. We can't afford to make any mistakes. Yes, the two replied in unison. Lin Clan. At this moment, the atmosphere was completely boiling. Lin Feng was now very famous. Not to mention the entire Lin Clan, who didn't know him in the Qianluo district and the entire Shiluo prefecture. He had broken the monopoly of the three major crafting families in the Vermilion Bird Continent and won the craftsman's competition in one fell swoop. He had even entered the Zhuke Chao Refiners Union and assumed the position of vice president. This alone had shocked the entire Shiluo prefecture. Moreover, Lin Feng's outstanding performance in the Vermilion Bird Challenge was even more well-known. He had as many as 118 million points and was at the top of the list. Even if the challenge was not over, everyone knew that it was impossible for anyone to break this terrifying score that exceeded the record by more than 3 times. Lin Feng had won the championship of the Vermilion Bird Challenge, and the dust had already settled. All that was missing was the final announcement. Not to mention Shiluo Prefecture, even in the Vermilion Bird Continent, the name Lin Feng had already become a legend. Because of Lin Feng's legend, the Lin clan's power was also rising at an almost crazy speed. Moreover, because of Lin Feng's gift, the clan's pockets were full. Whether it was treatment, wealth, status, or future, they had become a most attractive force in Shiluo Prefecture, attracting countless experts. In particular, the title of Young Clan Leader moved everyone's hearts. Today, Lin Feng's reputation in the world of craftsmen in the southern region was almost on par with Lady Nangong in the clan's hall. So that's how it is. Lin Feng smiled freely. His adoptive father knew how to take advantage of him and thoroughly used him. However, this was not a big deal. In fact, he also wanted to do something for the clan to make it stronger. Haha. Anyway, Lin Feng, you're my adoptive son, so you're the young clan leader. Lin Jin laughed heartily. Moreover, you are the son of Xiao Dian and also have the direct bloodline. The position of clan leader should be taken by the capable. In terms of strength and ability, my 2 sons can't compare to you. If you're willing to take over the clan, you can do so at any time. Patting his chest, Lin Jin laughed heartily. I'll immediately abdicate, and all the elders and grand elders will agree to it. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone agreed in unison, including the clan's chief craftsman, Lin Yan, and the chief steward, Lin Zhong, all nodded in agreement. Lin Feng's name was like the shadow of a tree. Everyone clearly knew that Lin Feng was now the pillar of the Lin clan. He was irreplaceable. No, I can't handle the complicated clan affairs. Lin Feng smiled. Adoptive father, you're the most suitable person to take the position of clan leader. I will temporarily take the title of young clan leader. The surrounding people laughed, and the atmosphere was harmonious, but they did not have many opinions. Good. Lin Jun smiled heroically and did not back down. He stood up and picked up his wine cup. He said heroically, Come, let's toast to young clan leader. Good. Come, fill it. Everyone stood up with smiles on their faces and raised their cups to Lin Feng. Their eyes were filled with admiration and respect. Times had changed. Everyone knew that the Lin clan today had been deeply imprinted with the label of Lin Feng. If they left Lin Feng, the Lin clan was nothing and would be beaten back to its original state. With a faint smile, Lin Feng stood up and drained his cup in one gulp. In fact, how could he not know that whether it was clan leader or young clan leader, they were just empty titles? Even if the current clan leader was Lin Jun, As long as he said a word, no one in the Lin clan would say no. This was the reality. Power. And this power was brought about by strength. With his eyes twinkling, Lin Feng could not help but think of when he had just entered Shirluo County. He thought of how he had climbed up the great path step by step until now, when he was able to control the entire clan. During this period, he had experienced too much. Exhaling softly, Lin Feng's eyes regained light, and he smiled. However, this so-called power was not important to him at all. It could even be said that he did not care at all, because he had never taken the initiative to fight for it. Everything had happened naturally. When one's strength reached a certain level, they would have everything. Compared to this, he cared more about family and brotherly love. Also, Lin Feng turned his head and looked at Lin Yuma beside him. He nodded gently with a faint smile. This time, when he came to Shirluo County and returned to the Lin clan, his greatest gain was her. Lin Yuma, who had been betrothed to him before they were born, but because of this marriage, her family had fallen. Because of him, she had suffered too much. What he owed her, he would never be able to repay in this lifetime. Under everyone's gaze, Lin Feng took Lin Yuma's soft and seemingly boneless hand. The latter moaned, and in an instant, her face flushed red as if she was drunk. Lin Feng's action was undoubtedly to announce their relationship. At this time, the entire hall was silent. Everyone's eyes were focused on each other. There was surprise, envy, and many realization. After all, everyone present knew about Lin Yuma's past. Here, I would like to announce something to all of you. Lin Feng smiled and gently took Lin Yuma's hand. He looked around and said, I, Lin Feng, will officially marry Lin Yuma as my wife in 3 days. I will hold your hand and grow old together with you. Everyone was shocked. Everyone was stunned by this sudden news, including Lin Yuma herself. Her beautiful face, which was so red that it was almost dripping juice, was filled with endless surprise. Her beautiful eyes widened as she looked at Lin Feng in disbelief. At this moment, her heart seemed to stop beating. But in an instant, the surprise on her face turned into surprise, and then instantly turned into thick sweetness and happiness. She lowered her head shyly. At this time, boom, the entire hall exploded into a cacophony of cheers and cries of joy. Congratulations, 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 young clan leader. Long live to a ripe old age. Everyone was beaming with joy as they congratulated him. Even Shui Yumei, who was standing at the side, had a faint smile on her face. There was even an imperceptible envy in her eyes. As a woman, what she wanted the most was not to have strong strength. Instead, she hoped to have a happy marriage and have a family. Lin Yuma's full chest rose and fell continuously. Her heart was beating extremely fast. For her, happiness came too suddenly. She never thought that Lin Feng would propose to her at this time. She, who had always been calm and wise, was now in a mess. But it was a mess of surprise and joy. All of her emotions turned into a feeling, and that was happiness. Haha, I'm definitely going to be the wedding officiator. Lin Jun laughed heartily and looked around. Pass down my order. In the next 3 days, all members of the Lin clan are to stop what they are doing and focus on the wedding. Make it as grand as you can. Inform everyone. Yes, clan leader. No problem. Laughter filled the hall, and the atmosphere was completely ignited. Everyone was immersed in joy. The young clan leader was about to get married. Lin Feng smiled calmly and held Lin Yuma's hand. He felt the beauty's palm was slightly moist, so he gently squeezed it. He wasn't being impulsive. He had thought about this decision for a long time. He really needed to give Yuma a status, an affirmation, or rather, a responsibility. Shui Yumei had said that if the Holy Lord of the Human Demon didn't come 3 days later, he would be considered to have passed this calamity. After marrying Yuma, the matter in Shirluo Prefecture would come to an end. At that time, he could leave with peace of mind. Looking at Lin Yuma, Lin Feng smiled, and a faint happiness rose in his heart, holding her hand and growing old together. It was a very simple promise, but it was his promise. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.